humans. Welcome to the M-Word podcast, brought to you by Martin, that's me, and Matt, that's him. Matthew, Martin, Phil.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Pleasure. Just before we get into maybe just some headlines, I just want to chat about language to start with. So one of the podcasts I was listening to, and I presume language is an important part of generally what's going on. When I was listening to the podcast or seeing the podcast you did recently with Reach and the other guys, and the headline of it was about, I suppose, let's call it holistic healthcare, but the word holistic.
Yep.
And it just got me thinking about languages, because when people talk about the word, and I think you might have even touched on in the podcast, when you think about the word holistic, it just brings connotations into your head, and often people might think wacky out there. And I guess language in general, outside of different languages, must be so important in what you do day to day. Let alone our normal lives.
Every success, every failure, every good relationship, every argument, every moment of intimacy, and every time you've done well in an interview, you've done badly in an interview, it's all been predicated on what you're outwardly using, the way you outwardly use the language in that moment, but also, probably more importantly, what you're saying to yourself inside your head, which then fuels the words that you say out. So, when you're going into that interview and you're really nervous and you're full of imposter syndrome and your voice is saying, I don't really deserve this. I'm not really, this is probably well above my level. When you go into that interview, obviously you're going to more than likely perform to the level that you're talking to yourself. Mm. I'm always more curious about what people are saying inside their head than what they're saying outside. Mm.
Especially. And I presume those signals you're talking about there that's why that saying of an interviewer knows whether they're gonna, they're judging you in that first 30 seconds to a minute is presumably because of those signals that someone's given off straight from the offer.
Yeah.
Do they fit with us because of how they're presenting themselves in these first 30 seconds to a minute to whether I'm gonna continue giving them that time, I guess?
Yeah. We make like huge sweeping judgments about each other straight away. You meet someone and you can't help it. You see them and straight away you're kind of assessing them as a person, trying to measure their character, what they're about. And that probably goes back to, when we were cavemen and you've seen someone coming towards you and you had to figure out whether this person is going to be a friend or a foe. You're figuring out, is this person going to help me, or is it going to be a fight that I'm going to get straight into? And the way you're going to know that is by looking at their facial expressions, their posture, the way they're using language of that time, whatever language that was. And we still do that now. We absolutely 100%. And I don't think we do it deliberately. And I don't think we do it with any malice or intention. We just judge people straight away. So often, like, the first things you say to someone can be something where they go, oh, right. They make a few, presumptions and assumptions and sweeping generalizations about you. So language is, I personally think it's everything. Coaching in parenting. I was chatting to someone the other day and he was saying that they could never get conversation out of their child, and the thing is, they've been asking the same question over and over again, which was, how was your day? And like, if you ask any child when they get in your car after school, how was your day? All right. You get very little.
A grunt.
So I said, try using like a positive question, like, when did you laugh today? And then use that to lead into, what were they doing? Who were they with? How was that? What was it? Sort of a playtime? Were they learning something? And you wedge into the door with a question that's not predicted, but we kind of always do like the same thing, don't we? How's your day been? All right.
And that language must get even harder when you think about the written format, whether it's through social media, because it becomes, I always think that language becomes flat because there is no facial expression. Often you don't know the personality at the end of the message. And therefore you can see why, I suppose when we first came across emails and people will correspond, you'd be like, they're rude. It's just their way of typing because you're trying to interpret because you haven't got the facial. And I suppose the same with Twitter and all social media now, that you kind of trying, though some people might be friends, you might not know other people, and therefore their comment might read one way but actually mean another. And therefore, and I go back to my point earlier about holistic and just think that these negative connotations around it, or preconceived, it's out here, it's wacky, let's go down the traditional route. If we talk about medicine, for example, we'll go holistic. And just that connotation.
That's language again. If I was to say, if I was to say that, you were going to come to me and I'm a mindset coach, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate you, you'd be like a little bit defensive and think, what's going on here? But if I was to say, you're going to go see Isla Scott, who's a physiotherapist, as you probably know, and what she'll do with your injury, she'll manipulate your injury to help you get over it. So it's every word has an objective nature, which is the dictionary, and you read the dictionary and you can read what that word means. But really, we don't all carry a dictionary around. What we have is our own dictionary ahead, which is actually subjective, not objective.
Yeah.
So you might say a word to me, and it might mean one thing to me, and it might have a load of meanings to me, which is basically from my history and my life. I might have been called an idiot a lot at school. So when you call me an idiot joking about, it triggers my emotions and gets me emotional. But it's just a word that you've used, a label that you've used. But it's my subjective interpretation of it, which has added all the meaning into it. And we've all got that inside our head. We've got a dictionary full of subjective interpretation. And all words are just labels, really.
Yeah, right. I'd imagine I wouldn't like arguing about your partner, so I get the impression you're taking that there. Let me explain why you're taking that the wrong way.
Well, I mean, this is another way you can look at language. So if we can have a bit of fun with language, and I can say, well, I'm with my partner now because I split up with my last partner because I kept beating her at table tennis, obviously.
Yeah.
But because I delete a little bit of the information, your brain immediately backfills the information and interprets it as something that is not.
Hence the awkward silence.
Right.
Yeah.
So our language is just fascinating, and we communicate very superficially, very conversationally, and it's very backwards and forwards. But one of the things that I've studied incessantly over the last 10 or 12 years that I've been doing this professionally is understanding the depth of language and how to look at it from different perspectives. And pretty much every course that I run, and there's all different types of courses, I say to the people that start the course, whatever you take from this week, just be studious around language, because it's the one thing, no matter what background you're from, whether you're here as a parent, whether you're here as a coach, whether you're here for business, personal development, the better you're able to use language, the more effective you'll be in whatever you're doing, and you'll get better results.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So let's go back a bit and maybe a little bit about your background. You're Manxie originally.
Yeah.
Brought up in
Peel
boy.
In the fish yards.
All right. Okay.
Not literally brought up in the fish yards. Worked in there as a kid.
Right. Was that family? Because family were in that.
No, we all did it back then. I don't think you could now, obviously, but I think, during when I was at high school, so sort of from 90 to 95, if you wanted to earn a fairly decent wage, you could go down the fish yards and you could open Queenies or hang kippers down in the fish yards. And you could earn really good money, £150, £200 a week as 13 years old, and you'd be down there all day. My older brother used to do really well with it. I tended to go down, work a couple of weeks till I had some money, and then I'd be like, I want to go and do stuff now, and then I'd chin it off. But of the time, there was most of the young lads would go and do it. And interestingly, some of my guys that I do business with now, I've got a really good friend of mine who's a business partner in my old business, and he was an investor. We stood next to each other in the fish yards of Peel. When he was a year older than me, and he's a millionaire now, and he lives in Essex, and all from this standing there,
from the
hanging. I think we were opening Queenies. We were at Barry's place on the fish yards. I don't know if it's still there, but it was great.
And then, what started you on the path you're on now? What kind of age were you at?
I think when I was growing up, I was a bit of a bad lad. I don't think I was bad to the core. I think I just was a bit of a chameleon. So, if I was when I was younger, I was moderately talented at running, but I was always more fascinated with cycling. But I was pretty rubbish on the bike. I was of the same era of Anthony Aspel when he came through. So never really seen him in any races, to be honest with you. He was that far ahead. But I
raced with Anthony. I trained with Anthony. He was a good mate of mine. I'm just trying to pitch in over back
Colin
then.
Shimon.
Yeah. Shim's a real good mate of mine.
Yeah. I mean, The problem I had was that because I was moderately talented at running, and I didn't really need to put much effort into running. I could go and I could win a race, and I didn't get beat very often. I just presumed that would be the same in cycling. And then I got on a bike. I'd always been fascinated by cycling. Cycling as a sport, just for me, it was just so much more romantic, if that's a word that you can use. I'd watched the Tour de France. I started watching it from Roche's win in '87, and then obviously Delgado the year after. And I know all the Tour de France winners for some weird reason from the late '70s all the way up to now. But I was never really good on a bike. But I just loved it. And I think so. When I was doing sport, I was hanging around with good people, which we were kind of talking about before we started the podcast. You're kind of chameleons, most humans, aren't you? I've always seen that you're the sum part of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And all that happened to me is I got a little bit older, sport kind of fell to the wayside. And then just stopped hanging around with perhaps not so much the right people.
And then you adapted to their behaviour.
You become one of that clan. Not necessarily a bad person. You just keeping bad company, and then that's manifesting itself into bad behaviours. But I think I was really fortunate in so much that I grew up in that last era before social media. Well, probably the same. Perhaps I'm not sure. Maybe I'm judging that you might be a little bit younger than us.
Sadly, he is.
But you could kind of make a lot of mistakes in the 90s, and it wouldn't be documented on any sort of social media as a legacy of your wrongdoings. And I kind of grew up just in that era there, sort of 97, 98, where I was probably just going down the wrong path. And what happened was, I remember it really clearly. I was in a telephone box, the one just by the Alman Bank in Peel, down in the square, and 2 policemen pulled me out of the telephone box, and took me up to the police station, and searched me. One of them knew my dad really well, which was kind of like, once again, I was like, that's a nightmare now, I think, because he's going to get back to my dad. But it was really good in some respects, because he kind of said, look, you can stay here if you want, but I know where you're going. I've seen it 100 times before. I know which direction you're going in. In a few years, you'll be in what was Victoria Road at the time. Once you go in there once, you'll be in and out, and I'll be dealing with you for the rest of my career, and we'll get to know each other really well that way. He goes, or you can go and do something. And the problem I kind of had was that I was a little bit of a spinning compass at the time. It's like, I didn't really want to work in an office. I didn't want to stay on at school. I tried chef's college, but that wasn't really for me. So one of the things that I think I've learned over the years, especially working with Durham Police, which I'll come on to later, is when young people don't have something to do, they can pretty much mess anything up. When they haven't got a purpose, they can go off in all sorts of directions. And unbeknownst to me, that I thought, I'll join the Navy. That seems like a good idea. Get about, I'll go see stuff. And I went to join the Navy, but the guy that was recruiting that day was Royal Marines for the Navy, so it was obviously the Navy and the Marines. And he kind of came in the doorway, and then he got you to do some pull-ups on the door frame. And if you did enough pull-ups, he was like, right, I'll interview you for the Marines. And if you didn't do enough, he goes, right, you'll go to the Navy. And that was pretty much it.
Right.
So I must have done enough pull-ups, which was surprising, to be honest, yeah. And sat down, you start talking about sport, you start talking about running, cross-country, cycling, and straight away he's like, yeah, you need to join the Marines, not the Navy. You'd be much better off there. So I kind of went and did that.
What age was that?
I would have been, no, I'd have been a little bit older. I'd been 20. I left school 16, 17. I went to Douglas for a bit, started chef's college, came back to Peel, I was working in the bars, Ironically, I worked in the Royal, then I moved to the Marine, and then joined the Royal Marines. True story. But
can I just ask, that moment with the policeman, I mean, when you look back now, was that moment when you kind of go, I need to was there enough conscious thought in your head to go, did he say enough to go, yeah, maybe he's got a point here, I need to sort my shit out?
Yeah, probably. I think I could have gone either way at that point. So I'm grateful now. I've had an amazing career with the Marines and then the RAF and then probably even more so since leaving the military. But it could have gone the other way, absolutely. But I think that's similar for a lot of. I think there's a lot of young people that go the wrong way, not necessarily because they're bad, but they just make some bad decisions because of whoever they're with. And then those decisions come with consequences, and it's almost like a domino effect. And you could flip the domino and it goes this direction, which is off in a completely opposite way, or if it goes the wrong way and there's another set of dominoes there, and it's almost like this theory of multiple universes that happen. There is definitely a single decision back then, and I would have been not sitting here on a podcast. I'd have probably been in and out of jail.
Want to break through my window? Yeah,
trying to burgle places, sitting having a chat. But so, which I think.
How much do you think that decision? Maybe we can't nail it down to a moment in time, but how much do you think that is luck, subconscious decision making going on in someone's head?
I think luck had a part. I think one of the things that I never at school I never thought I was smart. I was kind of given the label of sporty but not academic. You could run. I was quite good at football, quite good at rugby. I was kind of like quite good at all sports, probably best at running, but enjoyed that least, like I said.
Yeah.
And I think you can get given a label inadvertently, and then I think it just becomes part of your persona, and you almost play up to it. And it was many years later when I was 30 years old, I started reading for the first time. I started reading books just because I went on a course in the RAF, and it required me to read about mindset, required me to look about, why we do the things we do to do this course. And I was so fascinated by it that I just couldn't stop reading. I just kept reading. And I found that I had this memory that I didn't think existed, where I could read a book and I could retain the information from the book, and then I'd be on to the next one. And before long, the books were like stacking up, and it was almost insatiable. And it was kind of a bit of a eureka moment for me, because I realized that I just hadn't been interested at school. And I think, similar to purpose for young people, if they're disinterested and without purpose, I think that's a really dangerous combination for young people, because I think what they do then is they find stuff to do.
Yeah.
And the devil makes work of idle hands is never a true word said, I think, especially for young people.
Yeah.
Which is why I've never quite understood why governments don't invest hard in occupying young people, in putting on things which free stuff which occupies them. I know you could take this kind of conservative liberal look at this and say, well, we didn't have that when we were kids, but then I was causing all the trouble. And I don't think that was a bad person by any stretch of imagination. I just
you don't know how much of it. I don't know whether that's not to get into politics, but the politics system, so kind of this short cycle of 4 years that you have an impact quickly, or whatever it is every year. I don't even know that long-term vision of what we need to invest over a period of time, so this next generation have that stimulation to go down the right path. Whether the system's really built to look that long term. Certainly when I look at UK, that's certainly not the case when it's a 4-year cycle. It's about fighting to stay in power.
Which is why obesity will never be solved, because it's a 20-year solution. And then you're 100% right. In a really weird sort of twist of fate, I've been to Parliament a number of times in the last few years, as meeting some fairly senior people within the Labour Party, within the opposition, some on the front bench, and it fascinates me, politics. It always has done. I look at some of the times I've been to Parliament, and you sit down and you kind of meet. I've even met the deputy leader of the Labour Party. Sat down and had a coffee and just chatted about military stuff, about engagement of military, about homelessness. But you are right. The popular things to look at are the things that can be achieved in a cycle. Because there's no point in starting a project which, it's it's 20 years to fix it, and you're only really going to see the fruition of it after 15. There's no politician who's going to be thinking, let's do that.
No, funny enough, I suppose I'm thinking out loud now, but the Medicare that was brought in by Obama, which was a long-term plan. Again, I'm certainly not into politics, but again, a generation on, and that's getting scrapped by the next guy. So you kind of, it's all that investment and of, let alone money off, but the sweat equity in getting that, that's just...
I think American politics, as well as I struggle to understand that. And, you watch the election and you look at like the electoral votes and it's such a strange thing. I mean, I know it's absolutely normal.
Well, you're getting with less votes nationally, can't you?
You get with less votes.
Well, they have. It just seems bonkers that overall man-on-man voting, woman-on-woman voting, that
which
you
I
have
think
less
makes
and
sense.
stuff.
Yeah. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Not to oversimplify the thing, but it makes absolutely perfect sense to me. And then you watch American politics, and the House of the Senate, and you've got the House of the Representatives, and you just think, how does it all work? How do they get anything done? Because
they get too much done.
Yeah, maybe not.
So the Marines then. So you've done 25 pull-ups. Let's say come this way.
It was actually 3, I think.
Oh, right.
But it was on a door frame. So
right.
it's hard to do pull-ups on a door frame. And I think the only
reason
to
justify only doing 3 pull-ups.
Well, I think the only reason I was able to do it is because I was so light. I'd probably not been eating the right diet for a long time, and I'm generally quite slim anyway. So I think when you're light, you kind of get on, and I remember there not being much to grip on, and obviously I didn't know how many I was meant to be doing. It was just get on there and do as many as you can. And I thought 3 was pretty poor, but he did say that like most people hadn't been able to get 1 or 2 out.
Right. I think I'd be like that. So no upper body strength.
Yeah.
So was that just trying out for, is it inventory there, or was it a specific sort of section of?
No, the Marines is different. So the Marines is like a mini army. So you join the Royal Marines, and you either join as an officer, or you join as just what would be a Marine. They're called NODs, or recruits to begin with, and then when you finish your 32 or 30 weeks training, you become a Marine. The Livingston where we train the Marines is very different as well, and so much that we train our officers at the same place as where we train the Marines, which is very different to the army that have standards, which is they separate their officers and Marines. We don't. We have everyone together. So when you go and do basic training, you at the end of that basic training, what most people will do is go what's called GD, which is general duties, which is like infantry. Or infantry, sorry, not inventory, not counting, shooting, not counting. But occasionally you'll get some specializations, but because it's kind of like a mini army of its own, they've got their own chefs, they've got their own drivers. The job I did was what's called an LC, which is landing craftsman. So I would coxswain the smaller boats, so the rigid raiders and the ribs, and then I'd crew the larger ones, the ones that were in the back of HMS Albion and things like that. So you kind of totally self-sufficient as in the Marines. You don't really you rely on other units, obviously, and obviously other parts of the armed forces support them, but they are kind of self-contained, which I think that is a huge source of pride for them. That they are. We have our own chefs, we have our own drivers, we have our own pretty much everything. I don't think that will always be the case, though. I think that will eventually. The drivers will be a driving corps, and the chefs will probably be absorbed by the army chefing corps, things like that. I think that's what more than likely will happen.
Did you feel like you had a home there when you joined, or when you got involved?
I did, but I had a lot of imposter syndrome.
Describe what that is.
So it's that kind of feeling where you're out your depth with stuff, which was actually unfounded because.
What's that driven at? Self-confidence, self-esteem?
I think so. I think confidence is always context dependent. I think you can kind of, you can have a lot of swagger when you walk around Peel with your mates, but then when you arrive at Livingston and you've got these lads from London and Manchester and Liverpool and Glasgow, and I'd only ever been off the island either to run for Western AC, but I'd been on one holiday to Pontins, so I'd never been in
very rock and roll.
Yeah, I'd never been in a plane. From a small council estate in Peel, so I'd never been travelled, which I think is like probably the best developer and educator of any person, is to travel and see different cultures and experience stuff. But by the age of 20, I'd done none of that really. And, you know, I even remember, you know, there's a weird anecdote. When I went down for my pre-selection, I flew to London. I got the train from London to Exmouth. And I had a travel warrant. It's like a piece of paper that you send you from the military. And I didn't realise I had to exchange that at the train station and get my orange tickets. I didn't know. I'd never been on a train except for our one that goes from like Douglas to, I don't know if you can class that as a train.
Potentially not.
And, so I'm on the train. I've not got my tickets. I've just got this A4 piece of paper, and then it's packed as well. And the conductor comes on and says, all tickets, please. And everyone's getting the tickets out. And I just give him a piece of paper, and it kind of looks at me. These aren't tickets. This is just a piece of paper. This doesn't mean anything. You know, when you start sweating,
everyone's looking at me.
You know, I've never been on a train before. And then, he eventually, I think he sees, you know, that obviously I'm going down to do my pre-selection for the Marines, because obviously it says on the warrant, and he understands that the word ticket set. He goes, look, you know, from now on, whenever you go to you get on the train, you know, you need to exchange these for the tickets to the ticket office. I felt like an absolute blank, obviously. So
that imposter syndrome's there. You probably feel like you're at your depth, and therefore.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have it. I think not to have the sweeping generalizations. There's definitely.
Oh, we love them. They're fine.
But I think a lot of people. I think people from Ireland have it. I think people from Ireland, you know, you kind of you're in a bubble on an island. I mean, never so much as what we are now, but you know, a lot of businesses that I work with now, they talk about like their guys being like super confident, you know, in a meeting on the Isle of Man, super confident in Douglas. Put them on their own on a plane to London and go to a meeting in London, and obviously that's a whole different fish. And I think there were exceptions to the norm there. You know, I think Cav's a great example. I think he came out of the womb confident and got more confident from that moment forward. And I think he always believed, you know, he was on the right course for where he should be. And everywhere, at every level, he was almost like, you know, I'm going to be the best at this level. And either he was just supremely good at bluffing and should take up poker when he's finished, or as he's finishing cycling, or that's actually what he was, and probably that. But I think for a lot of people, I think, you know, you can pretend to be confident with your friends, but it's what happens when you're really in situations that defines confidence. It's kind of easy to talk about it. It's a Latin phrase, acta non verba, which is deeds, not words. It's easy to kind of bluff when you're, you know, sat around with your pals. But in the moment you're in a situation and the pressure's on you and you're kind of a little bit exposed, that's when I think that confidence is tested. And when I went to Livingston, I just remember looking around going, all these guys were bigger than me. They were all more confident. They seemed to like have this like banter with each other where they knew each other for ages. And I was really awkward. You know, I didn't really know what to say. You know, when you don't know what to say, you kind of try and say something and it just comes out all wrong. And I think for me, it was just, to begin with, it was just get my head down, don't stand out, just see if I can get through the first few weeks, which was brutal. It really was.
Because that's what the usual first few weeks is, isn't it? Is try and break you down in that sort of sense, to take away that anxiety and build you as a team. That's ultimately what they're doing there in that sense.
Yeah, I mean,
as you said, you found from psychology that
there's so much psychology that goes into it. I think my interest in what I do now started there, but I just didn't know at the time.
Yeah,
and it started with a very specific situation. There was a guy that was in the 2 beds down from, and I tell the story a lot of seminars that I give, because it is such a wonderful example, a true example of what happens with your mind and how your mind can go in either direction. So I had this guy called Norman who was in the 2 beds down from me. The first 2 weeks you get to Livingston, you go into induction, which is just like this like huge, it's like sort of a hanger sort of thing, a little bit like Full Metal Jacket. And you go in there and you have like the weirdest lessons ever. You have a showering lesson where, you know, you're in the shower with 67 other young lads with some, you know, mustached drill sergeant from the Marines showing you how to wash the balls. Like, you don't know what you're doing. And you kind of stood there when you're 19, 20 from the Isle of Man thinking, you know, how am I in this position here where there's 60 odd folks just watching a guy have a shower while he shows us how to clean ourselves. And you get shown how to do everything. in this very specific way. And there was this guy, Norman, was huge. This was 98, it was October 98. And he was massively into weight. So it was way before weightlifters become really sort of like cool for most guys to participate in weights now. And you see, office guys are in great shape. But if you think back, if you remember sort of to that time, if you looked at the England rugby team in the 90s, they weren't in great shape. They didn't seem to be going to the gym that much. The backs of the England team now were bigger than the props and the second rows that they had in the mid 90s. But Norm was like huge. He was Goliath of a man, and everything was easy to him. We'd go to the gym, and even though he was big, he could get like 16 and a half on the bleep test. So he was like scoring like one of the highest on that. He'd be the first up the ropes. I used to joke, I'd be like trying to climb the ropes, like sweat pouring off me, grimacing my teeth, and he'd just pull the roof down to him like that strong. His ironing was the best. The training team loved him. Everything was easy, and it was just. I used to look at him, and it just was so effortless for him. And I was like hanging out every day by my fingernails, trying to hold on. Like ringing my dad at night. I'm coming home, and my dad trying to talk me out of it. Just do another day. Get to tomorrow. We'll talk again. And we did this thing called Dunker drills, which is where they take a helicopter simulation, and you've got to basically simulate escaping from a helicopter that ditches in the sea. Got a huge pool in Yeovil, I think it is. Massive pool, really, really deep. Got a helicopter, but without obviously the propeller on. It's all stripped out. You get in. It's high up in the air, and they basically drop it in the pool, and then you take your buckle off. It's kind of a four pinch buckle on it. You open your buckle. It's kind of a little technique to it. It's dead simple. You just push it and twist it, and it comes straight away. You put your right hand over the guy next to you. The guy nearest to the window, who's sat here, maybe there's four of us like this. He pushes the window through. He goes to the window, and then as you feel him move, you go in the same direction. And you do this 4 times. The first time the helicopter just goes in normal. The second time it goes in normal and spins around upside down, which is, you don't know which way is up and which way is down. Then you go in lights off, normal. And then the last one is lights off, upside down. And lights off, upside down is weird because you can't really tell which way is up or down. It's really sort of weird. And on the 4th one, Norm's sat here. I'm actually sat next to Norm, and he's by the window. And we go in. I don't know, he must do something to his buckle. He must, whatever he's done, and you have that moment of panic. And the moment you start panicking and he was trying to and starts going nuts, and I kind of sat next to him and I was like, well, he's obviously not got his buckle off. I can kind of work that out. I can see what's going on, even though it's dark. I'm getting elbows to the face. So I made the decision. I'm just going to sit there quiet. I'm going to conserve my energy, conserve my breath. I know that they've got divers in there, they've got cameras in there. They'll pull it out before anything. But because he's gone into high flight responses, and his limbic brain is completely took over, shut down his logical brain. He's not thinking the same as me, where I'm just like, well, let's just sit here for a bit. It'll be fine. He's freaking out. He's freaking out.
The wall upside down in the dark. It'll be fine.
But we got pulled out, and Norm was broken. I remember seeing him sat in the pool, and the training team around him. They were trying to talk him in. They're trying to coach him back. He's got to do this, otherwise he's gone. It's a pass or fail. You've got to do all 4. Once you've done all 4, that's it, done. And no matter what they do, they cannot get him back into the helicopter. And I remember, I never knew at the time. I never knew what I was going to get into all this, but I remember thinking to myself, that's the first thing that he's had he's found difficult. And that, every day's been like that for me.
Yeah, right.
And I'd almost I normalized the struggle, and it was just every day was just another day's struggle. Whereas because every day was so easy, the moment he had that real struggle, that was it gone. And I think that's a good analogy for sport. If you look at sport, regardless of what sport it is, often the most talented young sports people that win don't end up becoming the top pros. And my theory on that is that what I call the norm effect, that because they're not used to dealing with adversity, because they're used to winning, the moment they can't win, the moment they don't win, it's like completely alien to them. And it's almost like it's something that they can't readjust to. And actually, if you look at most sports, the athletes that have been in and around the top 10, that aren't maybe winning but are always there with their backs, they're often the ones that become the champions. And they've almost had to like rise up like cream. And I think that's just, there were exceptions once again with super talented athletes, but I think as a generalization, most sports that I see, the best juniors don't necessarily mean they're going to be the best.
Yeah, no, I think we've talked about that on other podcasts.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that general mentality of, we talk about him quite a bit in Love Goggins, where he's he's had those setbacks, and it's kind of, I guess, rewired the brain.
100%. So, I mean, the business that I'm kind of building now, my Goji, is built on the principle that resilience is a word that, you hear so much these days, sport, business, parenting, school. And I kind of had this sort of not eureka moment. I kind of like thought to myself, well, we talk about resilience. We talk about, we want to be more resilient. We want our young people to be more resilient. We want our employees to be more resilient. But we're talking about resilience like it's a thing you can touch, like it's something that, you can buy from a shop, which obviously it isn't. And I was like, well, how do you develop resilience? What's the path? And I realized that there is only one way you can become resilient, and that's adversity. Adversity breeds resilience. Too much adversity, and the person quits and never wants to do it again. Too little adversity, and they just do not develop the right resilience levels. It's one of my favorite phrases: irritated oysters make pearls. If you want young people to be resilient, then we've got to give them the opportunity to experience adversity. And I think what we're doing collectively as a civilization is we're stepping further and further away from adversity. We're making life more and more comfortable for ourselves.
And I guess the analogy that probably a lot of people, and I'm going to use this because there's no winners and losers in sports events at school, you're creating that environment of there's no adversity there because you haven't finished second.
Yeah. It's good to lose. My fiance, can't believe saying this, I won't let my daughter beat me at chess. I won't let my daughter beat me at anything. In fact, there's a great photograph on my Facebook. We went to Laser Quest today. Ex-Royal Marine. My fiance, she has a really serious medical condition, so it's leukemia. It's managed. She's had it all the time I've known her. So she's got leukemia, and I've got 2 11-year-olds, and I win. And I'm merciless with them. And I celebrate like I've won an Olympic medal. I'm on the podium in the laser blast. And she was joking to me. She said, why don't you let Aileen win, at chess and I was like, she will eventually. Every time she plays me at chess, she gets closer and closer and closer. When she beats me, she'll know she's really beat me. It won't be me giving her a game to build her confidence. And, I'm sure you could argue the merits for and against adopting that approach. But for me, and this is, I say to all the athletes I work with, to be a good champion, you have to be a loser first. No one's born a champion. You don't win a Grand Slam at your first go. You don't win the Tour de France at your first go, usually, except for this year. You have to learn to lose. You have to learn to be able to absorb that adversity and then rebuild and then go again. And if we're not going to give that to young people, we're going to take that away from them, that opportunity to come last and actually experience what it feels like to come last, and then go, do you know what, I'm going to train even harder now because I don't want to come last again. I want to come, and they come 2 places higher the next time, 2 places higher, 2 places higher. That's like life lessons, isn't it?
Yeah, and back to the chess point then, is that, I'm sure there is always that balance where, again, a youngster might just go, I keep beating me, I'm not playing anymore, and they disengage in that. So I presume that's always a balance, just generally in life.
Yeah, well, we talk about it, with Aileen, we'll probably play 1 game. We don't play serially. But for me, we'll talk about the end of it, and I say, you had me on the ropes for
so use it as an education moment as well, as much as anything else.
We review the game, and I explained to her as well that, when you do win, you'll know it's for real, and it'll be so much better when you do it. Because, and I think that's like the nature of why we do stuff like sport, because we get that dopamine hit, when we get that real reward neurotransmitter that floods around the brain, and then that makes us want to go again the next day. What I've got to do is I've got to make sure she enjoys playing enough without winning to keep her going to the point where she does win.
I suppose if you, in that scenario, you're analysing the game and you're showing progress as well, because again, if you lose and lose and lose at anything, there's a point where your natural instinct, I guess, or human instinct is, I keep failing, F it, I'm going to go elsewhere. So
it's also building, from my view.
You're
building knowledge, because every time you've lost, why do you lose? What moved you? Thinking of chess, you can equate to anything, as you say in this sort of maybe if you're that way inclined to keep persevering, to keep it, that's where she said that's where the masters come from, because with their failings, they're learning what not to do, what works, and they're building up this data bank of scenarios and how to come through it, as you said, which ultimately, unfortunately, will end up in you losing chess at some point.
And I hope it's soon. And one of the things I say to Ellen is, you've got to develop a progression mindset, not a perfection mindset. Yeah. So as long as you're moving forwards, then that's perfect. Progression will always be perfection, because perfection will never exist, and you're much more likely to become disillusioned if you have this concept of perfection that you're trying to attain. And actually, if you're 2% better today, then you're going in the right direction. 2% better. And I tell a little analogies and stories as well. The Edison light bulb. Edison was asked how it felt to fail 1,000 times to invent the light bulb. He said, "I didn't. I just found 1,000 ways not to make it."
Right.
And there's other little analogies that I always think are great, especially with kids. The ice cube analogy for habits. So if you take an ice cube and you put it on a table, and the temperature is 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ice cube will remain like an ice cube. And then if you turn up by 1 degree only to 29, it stays the same to 30. Turn up another 1 degree, 31, it stays perfectly an ice cube. You turn up to 32, and then suddenly there's change. Suddenly the ice cube starts to melt. You turn up to 33, and that starts to accelerate. And 34, you get a real shift in the ice cube, and it almost starts to disappear. So habits are a great analogy for this ice cube thing, because people perceive that the important one is the 31 to 32 degrees, the bit where you see the change. But actually, every degree before that has been just as important. And if you look at most sport, the real improvements you get when you get that hockey stick profile on someone's improvement across any metric is usually when there's been a perseverance with something for a period of time, where you don't really see that much gain, and then suddenly you get this, like, things are really starting to take off. And one of the things that I've always noticed is that many people will give up at 30 degrees because they don't see the change. You don't see anything being different. But really, you don't know that it's just around the corner if you keep going.
So I think about like that, using that example in other scenarios. So let's say it's eating habits, where there's this cycle of, say eating poorly, and the downward trend's small, so you don't notice it. Just as much if you're healthy, there's this upward slow trend that you don't see. And is that, again, I think in the modern world where everyone wants everything now, we're all guilty of that just makes that more of a hindrance, because there's these small increment changes, and the eventual change, that hockey stick, is so not far away, but that perseverance and habit just drop away.
Yeah. And I think once again that goes back to potentially how schooling and parenting, we want instantaneous stuff now, and the way I describe it is that we want the noun, but we don't want to do the verbs. So, it's perpetuated by social media as well. So people want to be rich, which is the noun. They want money, which is the noun, obviously. But what are the verbs that lead to that? People want to be, I want to have success. I want to be successful in my business or whatever it is. But the verbs that lead to that is the ice cube for all those degrees. They're often is quite relentless, quite monotonous, it's quite repetitive, and you don't see a lot of change. But the problem is that I think our young people, and it's partly to do with social media, it's partly to do with social society generally, it's partly to do with parenting in school, we accelerate straight to the end. So a good example to understand this is phones. There are not many people that, have that kind of start off on the worst phone ever and then get a slightly better one and then a slightly better one. A lot of young people are straight to iPhone, aren't they? Yeah. They're straight to that. And the reason for that is because they don't want to be left behind by the peer groups. There's kind of that fear of, you don't want your child getting picked on because the Nokia 3210 in the playground. But But actually, that's exactly what we should all be doing. We should be, they should get the basic model. Then,
why do you think humans are like that? What do you think?
I think we've changed as a species. I think we've become much more, we consume stuff like we've never done before. And once again, I always think phones are a great analogy for society in general. There's very little wrong with your phone, is there, after a year or 18 months? But the new phone comes out, Apple, or whoever it is, Android, they have us on this kind of Ferris wheel where we're constantly upgrading and getting a new phone. We have this like period of a few days where we're really kind of chuffed with our new phone, and then we go back to just using it for pictures, WhatsApp and calls, and going on the internet. And so it does exactly the same function as the one before, with probably very little, visible difference. But we kind of like almost like conditioned on this kind of consumerism of consumer Ferris wheel.
So is that amazing work by the consumer makers to get us to get on that Ferris wheel, I guess?
Yeah. I think we could
they be looking at, do you think, at human behaviour as marketing strategies of...
Apple used Rogers' diffusion of innovation only to understand what happens.
Right,
so they know that there's different types of people within the population. So Rogers' diffusion of innovation is the uptake of an idea against time. So if you take 18 months, which is a typical cycle of an Apple phone, and then the uptake of that idea, what you get is a very predictable bell curve. It's kind of like, it starts off shallow, goes really steep, you get the main body, and then drops off and it moves the other side. And they know that the first bit of what they call innovators in Rogers diffusion innovation, they'll always get the new iPhone. They'll camp outside, the new iStore that's opened in Douglas. They'll be waiting.
PlayStation's out tonight.
PlayStation's the same. Yeah. People will be camping out to get that. Those first, I think it's at 13.5%, no, 2.5%. Those innovators, the ones that will do anything to have hands on it, Apple aren't too worried about them because they know they're going to buy it anyway. Now, the next group is what's called the early adopters. The early adopters will want to be first, but they're perhaps not prepared to camp out. So they'll wait a week or so.
I think I've seen curves like this for like Bitcoin when Bitcoin came out.
Same for any. It explains an idea, not just a product. But a business as well. A business is a good example. So that first 16%, the 2.5 plus the 13% that kind of exists there, they're almost a bit of a given. And then what you have is what we call a chasm, and it's crossing the chasm. Now businesses do this as well. It's like young people that start their own business, they can create so much business from their friends and family, and to start off with that satiates the business and gets it going. But then what you need then is you need a lot of other people that aren't in your social network, aren't in your Facebook. And the same with Apple. And they're called the early majorities. I think it's at 32% or something. Early majority, late majority, 32 or 36, whatever it is. If you get the early majority, it's like a domino effect. The late majority get on because there's so many people now got the phone. The late majority, what their contract will have been up for renew, so they'll wait till their contract might be 6 months after it's come out. There's so many of the early majority got on board. They've all given good reviews of the new iPhone. They got on board with it. Obviously, the most fascinating bit is the last 16%. They're called laggards. They'll never buy a new phone. They've still got the Nokia 3210. Apple aren't bothered about them. As soon as they reach, that huge 84% of the market, 18 months has gone past, and they're back again. Go again. And
is it always that time period then, or is it dependent on, let's say, the product, the idea, or something like that will dictate that line? So when you then equate to Apple, they work out what that cycle is, and they're like, oh, well, funny enough, that's when the new one's going to come out. So that's why you see these products coming out every year to 2 years or whatever it may be. Is they've worked out how long that cycle is. So naturally, that's when we're going to.
I'm not one of those suckers, but this is every year.
yeah. But I mean, they've kind of got us all on that, dancing that same tune, haven't they? I'm always envious of people. It's like, I've still got a Nokia 3210, and I don't have social media, and I was actually thinking today, I was scrolling on Facebook, and I was like, I've just been like scrolling for like minutes without any kind of conscious thought, and I haven't stopped once. I've almost scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. And even doing what I didn't understand my mindset, I was like, I know what this is doing to me. You put it away, and then 10 minutes later, there's an advert on TV, and you go out, and you sat on the toilet, and you go out, and you're like, this is getting a little bit,
In fairness, if you actually stand back and look at it, it's amazing, because they've got into that psyche of, how to pull you in. Is it Social Dilemma it's called? I've only seen a few minutes of it, but about how they talk about how they design the like button.
Everything is that, what you're looking at, they'll know just for how many seconds you look at something. So next time when you refresh your feed, right, that's coming back up. If you don't look at it in a while, they'll give you a random notifications by, here's a memory from today, or someone you know has posted this. So it's conditioning that it knows if you haven't looked or touched it, that application so long, let's reel you back in. And it's just, so as you said, automatically when you've got that 30 seconds spare while you're waiting for something, I may as well get fair now.
They were talking about, I listened to something a couple of days ago, again on that, and I'm sure you see it on all social media, but we'll talk about Facebook. It used to be you'd scroll and then it'd say load now, and you press in and load again, but they got rid of that because it was like an exit point for people. So because you had to do something, it was a potential that your brain would go, what am I doing here? But they've got rid of that. So again,
it just loads.
It's continuous forever, basically.
I
wonder if you stood there, it'd be interesting to survey, just 3 hours if you just carried on scrolling, where you get, you come to like the end of the world, the middle of the world.
Is there an end?
The first ever post on Facebook 70 years later.
There must be
Mark Zuckerberg or whatever.
There must be someone like a world record to scroll the world record. This guy scrolled for like 4 days, 3 hours, without eating or sleeping. But it's all about dopamine, isn't it? People always, when you say addiction to people, they kind of go, drugs and alcohol and nicotine from cigarettes, which are obviously all chemical hooks. But actually, it's really is more about dopamine. The gambling is hugely addictive, but there's no chemicals involved in gambling. But it is what the chemicals in your brain is what really is the addiction about. And I think what social media have done is they've understood that really well. The way it's designed, it's designed like a Las Vegas slot machine, isn't it? So it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, because that's proven that motion there. With the spin, it keeps you doing it repetitively. In some respects, it's genius.
That's what I mean. If you stand back, you think, it's to keep that.
It's terrifying and genius.
So maybe just go back to the Marines. How did that career pan through then? Once you've got out of a helicopter underwater in the dark.
My career was pretty unremarkable in the Marines. I passed out at Diamond, which is one of the top recruits, which was kind of really weird because I had still loads of imposter syndrome, all the way through. Even when I got my Green Beret, I went to Scotland. It's tough when you pass out in the Marines. No one really talks to you to begin with. You kind of.
What does pass out then?
So pass out is when you finish it, Linton, get your Green Beret, you do what's called the King Squad. Massive, fanfare. It's an amazing period. I got my Green Beret the day before my 21st birthday. And I think that what I was doing a lot, if I was to be really objective and look back at, I was overcompensating in lots of areas. So I was quite probably underconfident. So I'd be like the most confident person in the room to try and disguise this imposter syndrome. Which meant, I'd get myself into trouble a lot while I was in the Marines. I think what the Marines, it installed an amazing sense of purpose in you, to have done the training was phenomenal. I never really thought I was going to do it. I kind of I was expecting at any moment someone saying, "Is this lad from Peel in the Isle of Man?" And come on, get yourself a phone. Right. But I somehow managed to stay there, and then I got to the end, and you have your girlfriend down and your family. It's amazing. It really is. And then I think listening to Christian chat a little bit about, the highs and lows of sport. Whenever you have these massive goals where you're looking 9 months and all you're doing is working towards one thing, getting this Green Beret on your head, and you hope that you're kind of going to be there at the end. You see these other guys go before you every 2 weeks onto King Squad and get their berets and their girlfriends and their family come down, and you're just thinking, I just want to get there and do that. And then you get there and do it, and you put the beret on your head, and it's a little bit underwhelming, and you think, And then you come out the other side of that, I got posted to Scotland, and it was never really for me being in the Marines. I loved it. And I loved the history and the ethos of it. And I loved the camaraderie in the Marines was like nothing else I'd ever seen. You know, if you're in a bar and you hit one Marine and there's 20 Marines there, you might as well have hit all 20. They're all going to be coming, you know, and it doesn't matter if there's 200 on one side and there's 20 of them. There's that willingness to just do anything, and almost a culture of looking after each other and like not throwing someone under the bus. It's a big thing in the Marines to be just a good bootneck, a good soldier, which means more than just being out in the field soldiering. It's about how you are as a person. It's about how you look after other bootnecks. I'd never seen anything like that, and I probably have never seen anything like that since as well, if I'm honest. The tightness that existed. But I did 6 years, and it was pretty unremarkable. I was in like a strange time. I joined 98, I came out 2004. I didn't get any medals. I didn't go to anywhere that was really dangerous. You know,
So doing in Scotland.
I went to a few pubs, which you could say you should have got medals for going to pubs. But I got to travel. You know, I went to America and worked in the US Marines. I went to Canada, and for someone who'd never traveled, I got to travel. I seen Ukraine. I seen the Med. So I got to do lots of seeing the world, but not a lot of the danger stuff.
It's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I've never really, dwelled on it and thought, I wish I'd gone to war at all. That's not. But
no, because I guess, I know you listen to some people who've served and they're desperate to go. That's a driver for them. Listen to Jacko, and when he gets people on chatting and they want to get in the war zone, which it's different mentality, but it's not something that would particularly drive me either.
I didn't join the Marines for that, if I'm honest. I'm not really 100% sure why I joined.
Not policeman.
Yeah, the policeman.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more about it was the goal and the task of getting a green beret. When most people said I wouldn't do it because I'd been getting so much bother. I was kind of skinny as well. It's like I think most people. I'll have to ask my dad about this, but maybe within my family probably maybe thought I wouldn't be able to do it, and kind of understandably as well. Definitely outside of my family, without a doubt. So that was like one of the driving factors when I was there. I was like, I can't really go back to Peel. What am I going to do? Go back working down the Marine, tell all the stories about how I nearly joined the Marines.
Yeah, right.
So I think for me the reason for joining was that goal to get that green beret and to achieve that. And to travel and see the world, because I've never seen anything. I had no. You've got to remember in '98 we were coming out of Northern Ireland. It was probably the quietest time there was in the Marines. A little bit going on in Bosnia just before I joined, but really, Ireland was drawn to a close. Afghanistan and Iraq was not even thought of at this point. Little bit in Sierra Leone, but apart from that, pretty quiet. And I just thought we'll be going on the lash lots around the world to go and exercise, which is pretty much what I did, if I'm honest. Norways and stuff like that. But yeah, I just seem to miss like the big points. Like when Afghanistan happened, so after 9/11 and 40 Commander went out there, I was on my LC's course at Poole then. So I missed that because I was there. And then,
did it go through your mind like that state? What was that? 01 was it?
01, yeah.
Was it? I might end up going here, or something you'd look.
Yeah, definitely. I was doing security in Northwood then. So Northwood's like our kind of version of the Pentagon. I'm not sure if I can talk about it actually. Well, actually I can. It's pretty well documented. You never really know, do you, what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. But the Marines, I don't know if they still do, but used to do security there because that was kind of where all the secret stuff was, a lot of the decision makers were there. So when 9/11 happened, I was actually there. So I almost had a front row seat on like some of the stuff going on because, our world changed in a day, like for a lot of people, and a lot of people that were coming in, they would often give you a little heads up because, we were all soldiers, so you get like these, admirals from the Navy and, the very high ranking Army, RAF and Navy. And occasionally they give you a thing like, oh, watch the news tonight, you know, something's going to happen, then you watch the news, and that would be like the start of like the missile attack. And it was definitely, all right, this is different now. You know, from 99 to 2001, it just was seen, we'd go on exercise, we'd go traveling, you know, we'd go to the med, but it'd all be about getting lashed up and, you know, doing the exercise and then getting out. But from 2001.
Did you worry about going?
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. If I'm honest,
you just assume that on the basis that all the training part of that process is to get you into that frame set that you might end up in a war zone.
You know, I'd never thought about it until you've asked me that question. It's a great question. The reason I probably didn't is because if you asked me that now, I'd be pretty terrified because, you know, we've seen all of these, you know, all of these soldiers come back via, you know, RAF Lynham first and then Bryce Norton. You know, we've seen the cars going through the towns with, you know, people crying. We've even now seen, you know, people severing people's heads and things like that. But in 2001, that never happened. You know, we that was a different world then. We, you know, once the Twin Towers had been hit, and obviously that set a precedent then. And then you at the time, I wasn't really worried about it because I thought, well, if we go to Afghanistan, or, you know, if we go to Iraq, it's just like the Iraq War, the first one. Obviously, Iraq wasn't even on the cards then. It was all Afghanistan. But I think from 2005 onwards, probably the year after I left, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, were just horrendous years for the British Force LA, you know, in terms of what was going on in Afghanistan. And watching that unfold, you know, certainly changed my mindset on it. Absolutely.
I suppose as well now, being older, having a family as well, I'm sure that the thought process today is a lot different from perhaps more young and free 10 years ago. 15 years ago. So what made you leave in the end? What was the decision to get out?
There wasn't really any decision. It was just, I'd done 6 years. I knew I didn't want to be a career soldier.
Okay.
So I left, came out to Telemann, made a massive mistake, came back here without really thinking about what I wanted to do, as in professionally. So I kind of came back to Telemann, and I remember thinking, because you used to come back a lot on leave, obviously. So I'd be away the Marines, I'd come back and leave, I'd hook up with all my mates who were in the forces as well back here. You know, we'd be here Christmas and summer and Easter. In the Marines, you got like 2 weeks off at Christmas, 2 weeks off at Easter, and then usually 3 weeks in the summer. And you come home, we're all going all day and just tear it up. And when I came back, when I finished in the Marines, it was August 2004, so it was like summer. So it was like I came back on summer leave, but then he stopped paying me at the end of like the month. so I had this mentality that I was like on this extended leave for months. Probably I was just out on the lash with all the lads, not really, which makes me like cringe now, but with no consideration, thinking like, well, what am I going to do? You know, I just presumed that because I've been in the Marines, it would all be fine and it would work out.
It's part of that because as Marines, or any army, it's so everything's kind of done for you that you just don't think beyond that. Right?
Yeah. You don't need to.
You've got the exercises to do within the role, but there's no.
Yeah, you've got a very structured life. You don't need to sort yourself out a dentist or a doctor. So when I left the Marines, I never had to do that. So suddenly, like, well, I've got to organise myself. You know, these things. You know, and even like doctor's appointments and dental appointments, they come to you in the military. You know, you get given a thing, and like you've got your annual dental checkup, and then if there's any work to do. So a lot of your life is very much structured, and that structure is very comforting. You know, you just got to turn up with the right uniform on at the right time, do your job to the best of your ability, and if you do that every day, you get on really well in the military. And then when you leave and that structure is gone, it kind of leaves you pretty rudderless.
So they offer much, I mean, we've spoke to sports people where they've been so highly, there's been a structured environment for 10, 15 years, whatever that might be. And the moment they come out of that structure, it's like they go just in a bad path because they're used to having that structure there. The Army or the Marines or any of them offer, let's call it a phase, transition.
They do, yeah. You do courses. So there is like some work that's done, and you learn about CV writing, and there's usually when you leave the military, it's like it's over quite a long period of time, sometimes like 6 months or even a year. So there's time for you to do all of these things to, I suppose, transition you back into the civil world, as they would call the military. But that's predicated on you taking those opportunities. And I think when I'd left the Marines, I wasn't really interested in that. I was only still, when I left, I was only like 25, so still young. And I just kind of thought life would take care of itself for me. And obviously it doesn't, and then I did like 2 or 3 years back here. I worked for most of that time. I ended up getting a job actually doing block paving drives and doing groundworks. I loved it. I absolutely loved like the manual labour. I worked with just really, to begin with, it was just me and another guy, and then eventually one other guy. So there was only like 3 of us, 4 with maximum. And I kind of loved that. But obviously I was, after a couple of years, thinking to myself, am I going to be doing this when I'm 50? I was kind of labouring. And I started thinking, and this wasn't like in any way, in an arrogant way. I thought, I've got more to offer than what I'm doing. I'm working at about 20% of my capacity, but I really love doing it. But I am just a labourer. That's all I was. I moved stuff, I dug stuff. So I joined the RAF, so complete switch from the Marines, which was probably the best thing I ever did. The RAF was phenomenal for me. I would say the Marines forged my character, but the RAF shaped my intellect.
Right.
They educated me. They put me on courses. There was so many more opportunities that I was able to take advantage of in the RAF as opposed to the Marines.
And they, being ex-Marine, and they're very welcoming to how the structure generally works. So
most, yeah. Occasionally, like my PTI course was I joined as a physical training instructor, so my PTI course was quite challenging because there were a couple of characters on there that didn't like the fact that as an ex-Marine, and there was also an ex-Army guy that we were kind of really good friends. Interestingly, I was just chatting to him today on the phone, and they didn't really like either of us, I don't think. And there was only 1 or 2 characters, but they were quite influential. As a generalization, most of them were brilliant. And they were, because I had been in the Marines, they were really quite sound.
So what was the decision to go to the RAF then? Was it looking for that similar structure where I guess you can say you enjoyed that? Because coming back and not having that and then going into labour, obviously there's a wide spectrum of things else to do, and then you've gone back into that sort of style, I guess.
I'd worked with RAF, what they call ATI. So in the RAF, if you join as a PTI, as a physical training instructor, you do that for a little while, do that for a couple of years, qualify as a PTI. So you work in the gyms, taking the lunchtime circuits, taking the phys for recruits and stuff like that. But really, what I wanted to do was what's called an ATI, which is an adventure training instructor, where you go to Wales and you spend a year learning how to be an instructor, kayaking, climbing, mountaineering, all outdoor activities and pursuits. When I was a Marine, I don't know if you remember when Foot and Mouth happened, in 2001, Foot and Mouth, I think. And they moved all of the adventure training, moved from Wales all the way to Spain. So as a Marine, I went to the Pyrenees to do like a 1 week's mountaineering course, basic mountaineering course, and absolutely loved it. And all the guys that took us out there were RAF ATIs. And like they had like the best kit, like all North Face kit, the other PTIs or ATIs, like from the other services, like the Navy and the Marines, like in rubbish kit. And which is like a running joke with the RAF. The RAF always gets like the best food, the best kit, the best hotels. And that's absolutely true. And I was chatting to these guys, and I was like, so you do this for a living, that's all you do. You take people mountaineering, you go mountain biking, in the winter you go skiing, you go canoeing, that's your job. You do that and they're like,
paid for that.
And I remember thinking then, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that instead of joining the Marines. And then it was like much later on, I left the Marines, and that after a few years, And that thought popped in the head. He's like, well, actually, I don't want to join the Marines again because I told all the lads I'd never be back. And if I do go back, they'll go, we knew you'd be back. So I thought, I can't do that. And I didn't really want to do that as well, if I'm honest. And especially with everything that was going on with Afghanistan, I was like, I don't really want to go and do that. And then I started looking at RFPT and I thought, you know what, that looks perfect. You know, it's, I could see the progression. I do my PTI course. I probably, you know, I go to RFL, do my basic recruits course. I can do that. It's only 9 weeks long. That's won't be a problem. It's like a 10-month PTI course. I do a year or two at the gym as a PTI, and then as soon as I can, I apply and go on my ATI course, which is what I did. Everything that I had kind of envisioned in my mind, it almost happened, everything the way I wanted it to, all the way up to getting promoted really quickly. And I loved it. It was great. But what I started to notice was the more courses that I did and the more I was developing my mind, all I was thinking was, you know, just opportunities in the private sector for this. There was me and another guy that started a business originally, and we were kind of like looking at all the stuff we were doing in the RF, and like, we can tweak this and repackage it, and actually, this is something that we could, you know, really do quite well. And that turned out to be true. You know, we left in 2015, at the start of 2015. And the first contract we won was with Barclays in Canary Wharf. And we were straight there. And obviously, once you've done Barclays and you've got them as a client, we went to New York, we went to Singapore, training them. And you do.
What was the fundamental part of that training?
It was. I learned some amazing lessons with Barclays. One of which was like my imposter syndrome hadn't gone. So the first time we went to Canary Wharf, we walked in, and my business partner at the time, Phil, he was like super confident. Ex Cardiff City pro footballer. He'd played Cardiff first team, been on the books there till he was like 18, then got released, joined the RAF. We went into Barclays and he walked like he belonged in the place. I remember walking in thinking, oh my goodness me, because I'd been living for 4 years in Quirk in South Wales in the Brecon Beacons, so I'd been living in the country, and suddenly I'm at the top floor of the Barclays building in Canary Wharf, 30th floor, the one beneath the execs, and I'd a £109 Burton suit on that I just bought when I left the RAF. And then me and Phil, we got caught doing a selfie. Like at the start of the meeting, we had the O2 out the back. Okay. Yeah, we'll get a quick social media picture. So think ready to put on social media that night. And just as we're doing that, you know, all these guys were meeting for Barclays walking, and could have gone wrong, but we managed to kind of like reframe it. You know, we're from the country, so it's all new to us. This, and one of the things I learned with Barclays is people do business with people. And that's fundamentally the key to all business I've found, and I've nothing that I've seen ever since has changed my mind with that. That if people like you, they'll more than likely do business with you. So actually getting to know, like, and trust people is probably more important than, you know, like perhaps postulating and saying what you can do, and actually just taking the time to get to know and like them. And what we found with the Barclays guys is that the meetings that they were having with us were very different than like the meetings that were going to like hour to hour. A lot of it would be kind of really serious, stern stuff. They'd come out with like a forward brow. They'd see me in film. We were just like two PTIs from the RAF, and, you know, beaming smiles. And I think they just really liked the fact that we were energetic, and we were really curious. We were asking loads of questions, and I think that...
I use the word selling there, but what was in there to talk to them about leadership, talk to them about things learned here that you can apply in business?
The old Branson, you ever heard the old Branson quote? Whenever, not any opportunity, you just say yes and then figure out.
Yeah.
So what the gig was, which we knew very little about, was they had what was called operational risk, which was based on the 7th floor in Barclays. So operational risk, their job is basically I suppose like the fund police of the bank. They make sure that no one's, you know, losing lots of money like what happened in 2008. So one of the things that they've got to do is they face off against other parts of the business. Things like the investment arm, which are very different characters. So you've got these risk guys who were very introverted, very digital, very logical thinking, very, about process, about if they start, A, they go all the way through the process to the end. And you got these investment bankers, which are very extroverted, supremely confident. They cut corners. They just want to make money. They've got bright ties on, matching socks. Now, one of the things that they were asking their risk guys to do, which they'd never done before, was to go down and do presentations for the investment bankers. But the problem was, every time they sent one down, it's like sending tadpoles into a shark tank. They'd stand up and present. They'd be really nervous. The investment guys would pick up on this, and they would be really rowdy, and it would be like blood in the water for the sharks. So we got brought in, believe it or not, which is kind of incredible. We want you to train all these guys so they can deal with these high pressure situations when they're presenting. Okay. We want them to be more confident. We want them to be able to be more agile and be able to think on the spot, and less rabbit in the headlights, more, fox in the shadows. Mm-hmm. And obviously we just said, yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. The sort of stuff we did in RAF, never done any of it before in my life. And we we had like lots and lots of meetings over many months. It worked out. It was like 6 months of meetings with Barclays. Looked like it wasn't going to happen. And it's like life get breathed back into it. We were struggling. We were nearly bankrupt as a business. Because we were a brand new startup. And, it was pretty much right at the end when we're nearly done here. And then Barclays came in and was like, right, we're ready to go now. And then it was like a couple of $100,000 contract. It was like huge for a small business like ours. And we knocked it out of the park. Wolf Phil, my old business partner, he led the project, but we built this like bespoke training. We did loads of research. We looked at loads of different elements of, psychology, transactional analysis, confidence. What is confidence? How to be more effective with dealing with difficult and challenging questions, how to be more slippery with answers, specific techniques that they could start to employ. And it was huge success.
I presume you saw certainly the guys getting trained then a big transition in that period then.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing with these guys as well was, when you're in the RAF and you're training like recruits, you kind of get these recruits sent to you, and it's a captive audience really. You're a sergeant. They might be like just joined the RAF like 6 weeks before. When you go to Canary Wharf and you train these guys from Barclays Bank, if it's rubbish, they'll tell you straight away, this is crap. This is a load of rubbish. And they did once or twice. And that was a real learning curve, because suddenly every time you step in that training room, you've got to be absolutely on top of your game. You've got to know 20% more about the content than anyone in that room, no matter what. Because if they've sensed that you don't know what you're talking about, they're shocked, aren't they? But it was great. It was great learning experience.
And you mentioned the RAF, that's where you started to get this appetite for let's use the word knowledge or information. Is that something the RAF generally promote, or is that just because you were doing these courses, you kind of figured out, I'm a sponge here, I need more of this?
I think probably like most things in life, I think the RAF, Pareto's law of 80-20, I think 20% of the people do 80% of the good stuff in the RAF. And I think that's the same for pretty much everything in life. If you manage people, 80% of your time is usually consumed by 20% of the people you manage. And I think that there is opportunities there in the RAF if you go and find them. But you've got to want to go and find them. They won't kind of come and knock on your door and say, do you want to go and do this great course? As soon as I found out about, mindset, NLP, hypnosis, transactional analysis, I just found it all fascinating. I'd always been fascinated by people. I think most people are. We're intrigued by each other, how some people are really confident, some aren't. Some people seem to get really good, they'll walk into any situation and manage to get what they want. Other people seem to be, the absolute polarity to it. And I think that the more I learned about all these different elements, mindset and all the different components to that, like spokes and wheel, I always say, I just became more and more fascinated.
It's like down a rabbit hole of knowledge.
And then you kind of, you kind of have this thing where you realize that the more that you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. So you end up looking at psychology, and you look at Jungian stuff. You got to look at Sigmund Freud, and then one of the things that I'm really passionate about is called epistemology. So kind of, where does knowledge come from? Where's the origins? How does it evolve? And when you look at psychology, and then you start to kind of follow the breadcrumbs past Freud, and you go, well, where does this all go? And it goes all the way back to Greece and Stoic philosophy, and these Stoic philosophers that were kind of talking about circles of influence and circles of concern that Covey then wrote about, 2,000 years later.
I don't know, but yeah.
So these Stoic philosophers. So Stoicism is this kind of even temperedness, this ability to neither be overjoyed by a situation or over emotional about a situation.
Good or bad.
Good or bad. So it's the ability to be pragmatic. And the Stoic philosophers were 2,000 years ahead of their time in their ideas and how we should live. Their ideas from Greece in the kind of 4th century BC are as applicable in 2020, if not probably more applicable now than they were then. And a lot of it is, really good, sensible ways of thinking about things, neither being too, the probably the most famous of the Stoic philosophers, which isn't Greek, is Marcus Aurelius. He wrote Meditations. Marcus Aurelius
wrote Meditations.
Meditations is the book that he wrote, which is about Stoic philosophy. Okay. Sorry. And he's an incredible thinker, Marcus Aurelius, incredible. And he actually paid someone to walk alongside him and pretended he was a servant, to constantly say to him, "You're only a man. You're only a man. You're only a man." Right. And the reason for this, because he was the Roman emperor and almost revered as a god, he just wanted this person to keep reminding him, just a man. Well, he was a man. Well, he was a man like everyone else. And I think that if you look at like Stoic philosophy now, I think many people could benefit from reading about Stoicism these days. Right. Many people. Right.
So maybe to get onto that now, and I kind of, maybe it's incorrect when I use NLP as the headline of what you do now.
Yeah.
If you don't mind using that term, then we can dig into a load of different areas. So maybe just give the listeners an overview of what that entails, the headlines of that. Appreciating it probably you covers 1,000 things.
NLP is probably what carved my name in coaching, but it's kind of one spoke in a wheel of, I think, things that I do. One of the things that I've always prided myself on is I'm a generalist, not a specialist. So, whereas like someone that might study to become a psychologist might do a bachelor's and then a master's and really study in that one area, I kind of buffet learn a little bit. I read books about psychology, but then I'll read books about philosophy and books about all different things. And I think the reason why I do that is NLP, because NLP is a bit like that. NLP is almost like a smorgasbord of all different elements of psychology that two guys really. So Bandler and Grinder, these two American guys in the late 60s, early 70s, they started studying psychology, but they weren't psychologists, neither of them. One of them was a linguist, John Grinder. The other one was a mathematician and also an early computer programmer, Richard Bandler. And they became fascinated with psychology because they were at university, I think it was in California, and they were living with people that were studying psychology. And Bandler was like, these guys that are studying psychology seem to be more crazy than the people that they work with. And I've got a friend in London who's a psychotherapist, great guy. And I once said to him, how come you went into psychotherapy anyway? What attracted you to that profession? He said, well, if you're a tree, the best place to hide is in the forest, isn't it? And I get what you're saying there, because, I think when I started out on my journey of NLP, it was more self-help more than anything. It was more really about my own personal development. And it kind of just snowballed from there over time. But NLP does, I think, worth talking about the alpha. It does have a Marmite reputation, definitely.
Okay.
And I think quite rightly so as well. I think it's understandable.
Okay.
I think part of it,
think it's got on.
I think, so Richard Bandler, one of the guys that co-created it, when he created he didn't create NLP because it was modeled from other areas of psychology, specifically Gestalt therapy, group family therapy, and hypnosis with Milton Erickson. So there was nothing new in NLP. It was all stuff that was already there that was just reshaped and
everything in the world, really.
Like pretty much everything. But the thing that Bandler did, which was pretty problematic and destructive, he said that all these other forms of psychology are all a waste of time.
Okay.
They don't get any results. They just spin the wheels all day and nothing changes, which obviously is completely untrue and incorrect. But what it did is it really it rubbed the whole psychology community the wrong way. So that was part of the problem. It created a little bit of a us and them, whichever side of the fence the us and them are on.
Yeah.
The other thing, which is something that I'm really passionate about, is I think there's a lot of poor training with NLP. You know, as an NLP trainer as well, I can stand by the standard of my courses by the reviews of the people that have come through our academy and trained with us, and the standard that we insist that not only we teach the course out, but they're at the end of the course. But I think if I had 10 grand and, you know, I was sat in, I hadn't done any NLP training, if I had 10 grand in my bank, I could be qualified in a month to be a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always believed that there's not enough barriers of entry to get to what I do.
Okay. Charlatans probably isn't quite the right term, but
there are some like that. There are some like that. I think, and it's uncomfortable truth, and it's an elephant in the room of the whole NLP community that I've been saying for a long time. We just need to talk about it. We need to. It's there. It exists. You know, we know that there are people that are doing really poor training.
Right.
You know, you can do an NLP practitioner course for $7 online now.
Right.
So the certificate is an ABNLP practitioner of NLP, which is the same governing body that I give my certificates for, where people spend, you know, a whole week training every day.
Yeah, that's I take it that comes back to the whole way we're talking about the way we're geared nowadays is if you can get something now, you're going to, rather than, as you said, you can go online, get a course, or go to any other field and spend years doing it. Well, I know which one, you know which one most people are going to choose. Yeah. And that then shows in their practice.
Yeah, and I think we're driven by certification as well. I think, as a Western culture, we love certificates, don't we? We love to be able to hang certificates on our wall. And the more certificates, the better. So sometimes, there are NLP providers that, do like 4 or 5 certificates. And I might get students say, well, you only do 2 of yours. And it's not about the piece of paper, it's about the knowledge that you gained on the course. Yeah, I could give you another 3 certificates I'll make up and sign for you if you want, if that makes you feel better. Yeah. But we often lose students in that direction. And I'm very passionate when I teach about having the right professional ethics, and I'm very honest with students. You're going to come on an NLP course. It's a week-long course. It's not to be a psychologist, and it's not to be a therapist. For a lot of people, it's personal development. But what I say to them, is that if you really become fascinated by this, then do a coaching course on top of it. Do an accredited coaching course with someone like the ILM or the CMI. Do another master practitioner of NLP. Spend 2 or 3 years learning in bit chunks to really then become a coach. And the great thing about it is that you're going to have loads of opportunity to coach along the way for free, just with friends and family. When I first started out, it was just friends and family, and someone bit the nails, and they want to stop biting the nails. Someone had like a phobia.
So the headline to NLP, it's retraining the brain for certain rewiring the brain. What would the head, if you have to describe it to an alien? So it's written very much influenced by Bandler and Grinder, so neuro-linguistic programming. Okay. So the language element and the programming is obviously, it's reflective of how Bandler looked at computer programs. And he kind of said, we're kind of wired in a metaphorical way. And
that wiring, it can change, and it can change really quickly. And what we do is we think that change is a torturous process. It's a change from a caterpillar to a butterfly. When often it's really quite wafer thin. It's actually a decision. Change can happen much faster than people expect. And I'll give you a great example. You might love curries. Curries might be your favorite food, and you go out one night, you have a dodgy curry, you get food poisoning from it. You spend the worst 3 days of your life on the toilet, and then you think, a couple of weeks later, you think, oh God, I haven't had a curry for a while. I'll have a curry, and you go to the curry, and you can't even stand the smell of it. The moment you even think about curries, your mouth starts watering, and you feel nauseous. Well, that's a lifelong like
whiskey.
But whiskey, yeah, usually we've all got a drink, haven't we? We've all got a drink that we've
been burnt by.
So that's one example of where you can like something, and then have an experience, and then it changes. And I think one of the things that I've always been passionate about with coaching and NLP is showing people that they can, things can be different. Not always, and I'm always very respectful of the boundaries of what I do. I coach. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist, and I believe leave the psychotherapy to psychotherapists, leave the psychology to psychologists, leave the therapy to therapists. I'm a coach. Now, some of the coaching that I do, because it's all a spectrum, like most things in nature, probably does creep into that side. But there are definite things where I'm this is way beyond what I would do as a coach. And then I have other professionals, a lot of colleagues in London that are psychologists or psychotherapists, that I'll then signpost or I'll say, I'm not the person that can help you here, but what I will do is I can stay with you and help you find that person. But this is kind of it's a bit further out of what I would usually work with. And I've trained hundreds of coaches over the last 10 years and mentored a lot as well. And I'm always consistent with that messaging. Know what you're comfortable with, know what you're confident with, and always have in your back of your mind a signposting direction. So the moment the phrase I use is, if there's doubt, there's no doubt. If you're sat there doubting that you have the understanding of what's going on, perhaps you started off coaching, you've gone a couple of sessions into coaching, and then suddenly you kind of unpulling childhood trauma, and you're like, well, this is way beyond me. Always have that courage to go, this isn't quite where I'm at as a professional.
Like I think about business, and when you try and deal with clients and they want your help with something, and you're helping out, and you get to a stage you go, this isn't, I could maybe blag it for want of a better term, but you've got to be comfortable to go, here's the line, I'll signpost you in this direction.
Yeah, and I think one of the probably similar, like what you say in finance, you never want to be blagging it when you're working with wellbeing.
Yeah, of course.
You wouldn't want to know what you're doing. And I say I've had this experience myself. So early on when I coached, I got into that position where I was kind of out of my depth, but it almost like the inertia took me too far, and I felt as though that I was kind of invested into it. And suddenly I felt as though I'm not really sure where I'm at with this. I'm not really sure, this is above what I would usually do with coaching, but I was almost emotionally invested in the person that I was coaching. And, and it ended up unraveling, and I just didn't have the skill sets, didn't have the knowledge. And that's a painful lesson to learn as a coach. And it's one that when I teach people how to become coaches, you don't need to go through that pain, because you know in your mind, you're like, oh, this is getting a bit above me. So it's having that courage just to say, this isn't what I do, but I can still stay with you and find you the right person.
So I'm interested then, that do you think, cause it's just a thing that I've done a bit of reading about recently, when you look at ego, and that, again, how much of that do you think plays into that, you say you're trying to help someone and you don't want to look like, sometimes when you have to go, I can't help but need to move on, it's potentially ego kicking in, and how, do you deal with that? You see a lot of that, your views on ego in general, and is it I suspect it controls us more than we think.
Yeah.
We like to think, even if we're aware we've got one, or I think we've all got one, but there's a level of where that ego is.
Yeah. Think about how many decisions you make a day. It depends what book you read. There's insane numbers, like 100,000 decisions a day we make. how many of those are conscious? How many of those are you having an awareness of your decision? The touching your phone there as an example, is that a conscious thing, or is it an unconscious thing? So, if we go back to the phones that we talked about before, most of the time when I pick up a phone, it's very unconscious. And then I become aware and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this thing again. And a lot of our habits are driven unconsciously. We do stuff that's not necessarily in our awareness, but when we see the result of our unconscious thinking. And I think a lot of what we do is driven unconsciously. We don't really have, I don't think, as much conscious control as we think. We think we're very sentient beings as humans. We think we're very conscious. We have this consciousness, which is, we hang a hat on. Is what we've done a lot of this with. But actually, most of the stuff is driven underneath. And I think the ego is driven there. One of the models that I use with some of the athletes I work with is a self-concept model, it's called, which is to do with, in other words, another description for the ego. And it's a very simple model. We've got two selves, effectively. We've got a self-image and an ideal self. The self-image is the person you see in the mirror, with all the positives and the negatives that you perceive. And you look at the person in the middle, and that's you today. It's a snapshot of you today. And it changes context dependent. You might be with a group of people you're really comfortable with, and that self-image changes. You might be with people that you're absolutely not comfortable with, and suddenly that sort of moves. It's never a fixed position. But we've got this other self, which is the ideal self, which is the person that we want to be, the person that we strive to be, the person that, we desperately want to be perceived as. And the bit between the middle there is, I think, where this ego kicks in, where sometimes you've got this reflection where you know what your capability is, but you'd love to be operating up here. But there's a huge gap between those two things. And there's a danger in that gap there. And it exists in everything, in sport and business. That knowing that gap is vital, because if your ideal self is up here and your self-image is down here, then you're going to have low self-esteem because you're miles away from where you want to be. If your self-image is there and your ideal self is here, is below, then you're going to be overconfident. You're going to be overbearing. You're actually going to be the opposite of imposter syndrome. You're going to have so I think that the ego that you talk about sits in that gap, in that space between the two. And it can be dangerous, that.
How do you control it? Being aware of it, being conscious of it, getting it from the subconscious to the conscious.
Do you know one of the people I love listening to the most? Or I don't know if you've had him on, Mike. Mike, when Adam say like the three wise men, probably more two guys that go swimming in the cold water and one wise man. I'd say actually, well, maybe Ian's very smart as well in terms of like his knowledge of what he does is incredible. I know he's been on this one, but I like listen to Mike, and it's incredible. Like he's got a kind of a depth to his knowledge, and it's probably because of all of the studying that he's done all over the world, all of the self-reflection. And I think that you really you get to know your ego when you do lots of personal development, lots of self-reflection, lots of being honest with yourself, lots of accepting that at times that you're going to do the right thing, at times you're going to do the bad thing, but it's about kind of reflecting on it and understanding what drives it all. Am I driven? Have I done the wrong thing, but I've done it for the right reasons? Have I done the right thing, but I've gone about it the wrong way?
Okay.
What are my actions I do daily? Where's my cognitive dissonance? Where are my beliefs that kind of I do these behaviors which seem to have opposing beliefs? I go to the gym and I want to be healthy, but then I come out of the gym and I smoke a cigarette, and the two just don't match up at all. But they're incongruent with my person I want to be. But the two behaviors I absolutely do. I think you get through all of that with like self-reflection, really asking yourself like searching questions. And I think that's where like what Mike does with mindfulness and sitting with your thoughts and exploring yourself inside.
So just to pick up on that point now, where you talk about conscious and subconscious.
Yep.
I'm intrigued, so I'm presently listening to a book that was recommended to us by, I can't remember who it was, Think Fast, Think Slow. I think it is.
Daniel Kahneman's.
Yeah.
Rich Hill, I think.
Yeah, and I'm halfway through listening to it. It's heavy going in the sense of not being my particular expertise.
Yeah.
But talks a lot about subconscious in there. And one of the things that always sticks out to me when I talk to people about this, talk about these judges who were looking at parole hearings, and based on the time of day, their decisions were weighted. So I think after lunch, they were more likely to give parole, where if your parole was up just before lunch, you were very, over an extended period of time. While the judges always felt they were making fair decisions, there was obviously a lot of subconscious things going on.
Yep.
And I suppose we just maybe expand a bit on the subconscious and that how much it probably drives people again that they don't realise, I guess. That's something I'm trying to be more aware of, like decisions I make and actions, how much of that is driven subconsciously.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And it's a difficult thing to measure, what's subconscious and what's conscious, because, we have different conscious activity around the brain. You look at fMRI scans, you look at where there is activity in the brain. Is that the consciousness, the activity? Difficult to tell. It's impossible to really understand, I think. I think, that book, Daniel Kahneman's fascinating. So this kind of like fast thinking we do, and the slow thinking, the slow cognition, which is conscious thought, like doing sums and applying thinking to solve a problem. And then there's this fast thinking we don't even think about, where we talk about stuff like gaze heuristics, catching the ball. When you go to catch a cricket ball, you don't think about anything really, but the amount of calculations that goes on your brain, the amount of thinking that your brain has to do. And certainly if you look at sport, it's a wonderful example. Most sportsmen, when they're operating at the very top, whether it's on a bike, whether it's boxing, whether it's golf, it's when they're in that no thought,
flow state,
that kind of no thinking. But that's a really wonderful sort of dilemma to pose. Is that, are we really meaning no thinking, or are we actually meaning lots of thinking but no awareness of the thinking?
Okay, yeah.
Because it's not all of this stuff's not happening. If you look at a TT race, you say, for instance, the rider there on the picture, you talk to those guys and they want to be riding in that flow state where they're not thinking about anything. But it's a conscious thinking I think they're referring to, because their brain is still going to be leaning, it's going to be accelerating, it's going to be, that's still driven from their brain, which does everything on the bike.
Not sat there thinking, what am I having for tea? Or something like that,
I think that's, you talk, I remember chatting, because I did a TED talk about this, and I remember chatting to Milky, and he was saying, like that's when the problems arise, when you start thinking about, where you need to be later, or, the moment that conscious brain starts getting involved in the internal dialogue, that's when the problems arise. And I think that if you look at athletes, and once again, if I refer back to Mike Cooley, he was talking about that, why should we wait for athletes to do high performance? And the whole goal behind what he does, which I find is fascinating, is that you can have high performance in making a cup of coffee, getting into that flow state where you're paying attention to everything, where you clear your mind of all the clutter and all of the unnecessary stuff that's going on there, and you give yourself 100% in its entirety via all of your senses just to making a coffee and being aware of it. And he said that that's what a lot of people miss about mindfulness, is that they think it's about being in the lotus position or sitting on the mat, but actually it's an application of being able to do it wherever, in whatever context, and almost having like high performance in mundane activity. When he was talking about that, I never thought of this. I'd always been fascinated by athletes.
Well, they call it living in or being in the moment, I would guess. The moment is this cup of tea. What does it smell like? What's the heat from it? What's the sensations, I assume? That's While they're thinking about what's for tea later.
Black and everything else. But then if you're concentrating on that, then are you still not thinking? There's the part you're still not thinking. If you're thinking about, right, I need to smell this, I made it like this, and so you still, again.
I think it's a step on from that, because you're just not thinking. It's just kind of, again, Mike talks about the mind, doesn't he? You're not your mind.
Yeah.
And it's that, I think, that separation. Yeah.
There's a great,
Mike.
there's a great, so It's a great mathematical problem which highlights like the fallacies in the way we think. So, if I was to give you an equation, you might have done it before, and if you have, obviously don't give the answer away. But if you haven't done it before, it'll be interesting. So, if I take a bat and a ball, and
no, this is in the book, I think.
The bat and the ball cost £1.10 together, and the bat costs £1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
I don't say, because I know it's wrong.
So the £1.10 for the two items, and the bat costs £1 more than the ball. So how much does the ball cost?
Well, I know it's wrong, but 10.
But how do you know it's wrong?
Because you're
I've kind of
phrased
it. Yeah, I think it's a phrase. We call it knowing it was a trick question. It's not logic. Your logic brain says, of course, that's right. But and I remember listening to it. It's in that book. I remember listening to it about 4 or 5 times to get my brain to understand, and I can't actually still remember the answer.
It's a heuristic, isn't it? So it's when your brain kind of jumps to the answer. There's this theory that we talk about in hypnosis that the brain will always apply the least amount of energy and calorie to solve a problem. So if it's an obvious solution, it will jump to the obvious answer. And once your brain's jumped to that answer, once you've shone the torch on that, it's very difficult to then find. The answer is 5p. And the reason for that is that if the bat and the ball cost £1.10 together, and the bat costs £1 more than the ball, so £1 more than 10p is what? £1.10. £1.10 plus 10 is £1.20, so it's too much for the equation to work. The only way that it can work is if it's 5p, £1 more than 5p is £1.5. £1.5 plus 5 is £1.10, which gives you the £1.10 for both together. Such a very simple equation, but it highlights.
Yeah, and I always find that my brain's like an elastic bank, so it wants to flip back to go, no, it's 10p, no, it's 10p. And the other side's going, no, think it through it logically.
I've posed that on courses, and still, there are very intelligent people that I still can't.
I know that, I still can't remember.
I can't get my head around it.
Well, I don't profess to be intelligent, but
yeah.
Well,
it was as soon as you said that, I was like, I'm going to say it's going to be 10p. No. Yes, no.
It's like the things you see on Facebook, isn't it? It looks like a simple problem. It's not. It's kind of a trick question.
They used to do like banana, half a banana, and then 3/4 of a pear. Yeah, I've seen those sort of things where you want to see everyone knows the answer or whatever it is. No, they don't.
But it goes back to that thing we're saying about biases. So once you jump to the answer, and I think that's how biases work. Your unconscious brain, for whatever reason, you jump to the answer and you become aware of it. And once you've gone in that direction, it's kind of difficult to unpick that. The analogy that I often use is it's like trying to put a chocolate bar back down in a petrol station. Once you've got it in your hand, you've kind of got ownership of it, haven't you? There's very few people that you'll see pick the chocolate bar up and go, I'll leave that there. And we're like that with when we've made a decision about something and we've become aware of it. Sometimes that's really, we're committed to it. We're invested in that outcome, and then unpicking that sometimes is not the easiest thing to do, I don't think. And I think that's the nature of bias.
Yeah, bias is an interesting subject. Sort of an expansion of it, isn't it? And that unconscious bias, and again, I'm only just kind of trying to learn about it. But again, it seems such a, I don't know what the right term is. There's so much of it going on, I guess, within your own brain that you just don't realise. Yeah. And you can stand back. So in the finance world nowadays, a lot of the discussions around conflict. I've got a conflict. How am I dealing with that conflict? Yep. And there seems to be this initial reaction of, well, I can see the conflict and I've dealt with it, but I'm sure there's subconscious biases going on underneath that aren't making you step back enough from it to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Even taking it back to the first example of language and things like that, I think there's still, whether people say unconscious bias in interviews, but if I don't know, there's someone who may for some reason look very similar or same name as someone who has been a problem. I won't even say a name because somewhere I'll think I'm talking about someone. You see Martin, I was like, I can't deal with another Martin. You know that sort of thing. But it's that bias straight away that it's ingrained on. And
I remember once again my friend in London, who's also called Phil, Dr. Philip Andrews, really great guy. And he was telling me about the vagus nerve, and the mind-body connection via the vagus nerve that runs down the spine. And he said he used a wonderful analogy to explain it. He said it's like a tuning fork. It's like a tuning fork for your nervous system. And obviously all of your senses are coming in by your nervous system. And so the way he described this vagus nerve is, say, you're brought up, once again, we chatted about this before, your dad calls you an idiot, and he says to you all the time, you're an idiot, and he says it in a certain tonality, in a certain way. And then you fast forward like 20, 30 years in your life, and you're in a job, and your boss uses the same tonality, the same word, and it sets off this absolute overreaction that you can't control. And what you were saying is, this is your vagus nerve, like a tuning fork, almost like ding, 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 and it goes straight into, and it remembers these experiences, not consciously. It doesn't ping the memory. It remembers them subconsciously, but it sets off this huge overreaction in the person. And he says that this vagus nerve is a fascinating thing that we've all got a lifetime of experience where certain stuff will happen which will have meant stuff to us, and then someone can say something and it can kind of have that triggering effect.
I think about that now and think about conversations and dealing with people where things you kind of feel like someone, you deal with them, and then you say something that your reaction is not what you would expect.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess the connotation or that word or that approach was left a bad taste somewhere back here, and it's just bringing those emotions back up.
Yep.
Interesting. So again, we're going to flip around on loads of different things. That's okay. Appreciating time is moving on. So I want to talk about, let's go with, because I've got a long list. Let's go with hypnosis. So you work in a hypnosis space, let's say. Again, a layman, I think, will go, is it McKenna, his name? That's where everyone immediately goes, this preconception of the language and using that word and what it means. But what is it? What is it? Let's take it back to its basics.
Hypnosis is the thing that fascinated me the most when I started all this. I was just, I didn't think that I'd be able to be hypnotized. Because my misperception was that people that hypnotized would be weak-minded, and I was like, well, I've been in the Marines. I've done quite a lot of, fairly arduous physical stuff, which took a fairly resolved mind to complete. So I didn't think I'd be able to be hypnotized, and I was absolutely, couldn't be further from the truth. I was really suggestible. Hypnosis is one of the most natural states that you can imagine. The problem of hypnosis is it's got the misperception, the bad press around hypnosis is because of stuff like stage hypnosis, and as well to a certain extent, people like what Darren Brown's done, in some respects of some of the more risque things that he's done, and it gives people this kind of real suspicion around hypnosis, almost this like fear. One of the kind of fathers of hypnosis, a guy called Dave Ellman. And he said the one thing that will keep someone out of hypnosis is fear. If they don't have enough confidence or trust or rapport with you, and there's fear there, then it will never happen. The reality of hypnosis is we're in hypnosis all the time. You're hypnotized all the time. There is only one type of hypnosis, which is self-hypnosis. So, although I sit next to someone and I guide them into that hypnotic state, I'm just a sat nav in that process. They're the driver and they're the vehicle. But, every time you've zoned out watching TV and then you kind of have to shake your head, your gaze has been fixated on something, or
So that'd be similar driving. When you drive somewhere and you're like, how did I get here?
The most common form of hypnosis is what we call driving trance. So a driving trance is when your unconscious mind has took over, and you've driven this journey. And some people, this could be like a whole motorway journey, hundreds of miles. And you go, do you know what? I didn't think about one gear change, one indication. I've come this whole journey almost like in another place.
See, Isle of Man, there's probably no indication going on.
No. I've noticed that people don't let you out so much on the Isle of Man, do they? You kind of wait in a junction, it's really busy, and you're like, I'm going to have to do some London driving to get out of this.
Stick the nose out.
Yeah. But so that's the most common form and nearly everyone that you'll speak to has experienced that.
How far away is that? If you can call it a scale from meditation, from being
not far. Like when I first started using hypnosis and coaching, it was it was a game changer for me. If I'm honest, when I first learned NLP, I learned hypnosis at the same time, but I learned it more out of curiosity myself. I didn't really think, I'm not going to use this. And it was actually a friend of mine over here, it's actually my kid's godfather, Dr. Walker, the chiropractor. So he's a mate of mine, and he said, look, I bite my nails, and would you do some hypnosis? And I'd done the course, but I'd not done any practice with it. And I thought, well, it's one of my best mates, or I thought, do you know what? Yeah, whatever. I didn't obviously tell him that I didn't really think. I didn't think it was going to work. I don't think that's like the best way to describe it. But I hadn't intended on really pursuing hypnosis. I'd just been really curious myself. And I did a bit of reading. I read back through my books. I watched some YouTube videos on specifically around nail biting or nail biting cessation. Watched a few people that I know are really good online that I'd watched some of their stuff. And said to Chris, look, we'll give it a go. If it doesn't work, the only thing that's going to happen is you're still going to bite your nails. And obviously if it does work. If I'm honest, I was pretty unsure it worked because I hadn't done anything at this point. I did like 50 minutes hypnosis, like I said, just as a favour. And then months later, I said to him, how's it going? He goes, I've not bitten my nails since. Mm. And he, at the point where he had hypnosis, was really quite avidly biting his nails. And that was a bit of a wake-up call to me, because I was kind of like, oh, well, actually, maybe I'm not giving this the attention it deserved. I was fascinated by it, but I wasn't perhaps giving it the focus that it deserved. And I started just saying to people, if friends and family once again, which is where I started everything, I don't know if you've got like a bad habit, you might not be confident when you're presenting, or bite your nails, or whatever it is, if it's only a minor thing, then I'm more than happy to do it. And the way that I started out as well was, I'd say to people, I'm kind of brand new at this, I've done a really interesting course, but if you're kind of happy for me to be a bit clumsy, and
it's guinea piggy type scenario.
Then we'll give it a go. And what happened was that each person I was working with was just getting like really good results. I'm not saying all the time, not seeing it. Every single person I worked with, the result was fantastic, but there was a lot of people I was like, this is working out really well. And that kind of fed that interest and that curiosity. And then I just went on some more courses, I learned some more. I kept going and going and going. Master practitioner, I went out to Spain and did a load of stuff out there in Barcelona.
So can I ask, what exactly are you doing in those sessions?
I was going to say, what's happening?
Yes, because you're getting them into a state. But then what? Like, you're not whispering in their ear saying, "Don't bite your nails," or is it
like
most people say to me, "You're not going to make me hop up and down."
That's what I mean. I'm fascinated by it as well, because you think of
what's chemically going on, I guess, to do.
So the hypnosis has always been a source of real mystery for ever since. It goes all the way back to there's evidence of Egyptians using hypnosis in the context of like rooms where they went into altered states. Hypnos is obviously the god of sleep from the Greek mythology. Now, the real sort of first examples of hypnosis is an Austrian guy called Franz Anton Mesmer. That was probably around for many years before that, which is where we get the word mesmerized and mesmerism from. And he was using something called animal magnetism. It started off in Austria and Germany, but then he went to France, and then he ended up working with the French royalty, kind of late 17th century. So it's been around for hundreds of years, hypnosis, but so mysterious that it creates this real sort of, some people are really suspicious of it. Some people believe it, it's complete hoax. Other people, that they're just fascinated and want to try it. Now, I think what's happened recently is with stuff like fMRI scans, they're much more able to look at what happens with like the neural activity and hypnosis. Before that, there was no way to really tell. You couldn't see into the mind of the person. But what we're doing effectively is communicating directly with someone's subconscious mind. And now the reason why that's such a muted subject to understand is because how do we know which bit's subconscious? How do we know which bit has not got this consciousness? We still don't really understand consciousness as a science. It baffles us. Where did it come from? How did it develop? Where does it go? Does it go away at night? Do we regain it in the morning? What happens in sleep to our consciousness? What happens in hypnosis to our consciousness? But effectively, what we're doing is we're kind of communicating with that deeper part of the brain, that subconscious part. Now, most of your behavior is driven subconsciously. And what we try and do from time to time is we try and logically think our way out of deeper emotional problems. So the best example I can give you for this is a phobia. So I've worked with, in the last 12 or 13 years that I've been doing this, I've worked with probably over 150 people with phobias. Some phobias, like the most extreme you can imagine. I've worked with people that have faked heart attacks to get a plane on the ground because they're so afraid of flying. I've worked with a guy that was terrified of cotton wool for 40 years. His whole life he'd been petrified of cotton wool, jellies, obviously spiders, moths, needles, hundreds and hundreds of people with phobias. Now, you got a guy that's afraid of cotton wool or jelly or spiders. They can sit there all day and logically go, it makes no sense. I know that cotton wool provides no danger to me whatsoever. It's not going to kill me. In fact, if I fell off a building, I might want lots of cotton wool there on the bottom. So I know logically it makes no sense. But then you get out the cotton wool, and what does the person do? They hit the roof and then they're out the door. And the reason that is that the limbic brain takes over. And for whatever reason, at some point in the time, they've been really afraid with cotton wool in front of them, and the perception of their brain is that cotton wool presents them real danger. And that could be a spider, it could be cotton wool, it could be jelly, it could be clowns, it could be anything.
That's, I assume, a subconscious process that's going on.
Yeah.
Just consciously you will go,
Yeah, because consciously you sit there with this
you can
logical brain,
Yeah,
this rational, logical brain, this neocortex we have, and go, well, it makes no sense, I can think logically all day long, but if you read Steve Peters's book, which is the chimp, the limbic brain, when that emotional brain takes over, the logical brain just gets closed off anyway, and that's just evolutionary. So
in that book we were talking earlier, he calls it system 1, system 2.
Yeah. So what he says, I think Daniel Kahneman, is that the system.
Which way around. Yeah.
One is slow thinking, one's fast thinking. Slow thinking is when we're paying conscious attention to it. It's when we're doing a mathematical problem. So the actual curious thing about the bat and the ball is it's a combination of both, because it's a logical mathematical equation, but because it's so simple, you jump to the answer straight away. So it mixes both types of thinking up. Now, the subconscious brain, or the chimp, or the limbic brain, or the deeper parts of the brain, what happens with some of the phobias is that no matter what, no matter how much they rationalize it, whenever you get the thing out, they're absolutely petrified. And actually, what you do with, you don't necessarily even need to use hypnosis, but say for instance, you use hypnosis, there's actually a technique you can do with a person, wide awake, just running through a visualization. It's more to do with the picture that they make in their mind. It's more to do with the image. Most people, if you say for instance, someone's got we'll use cotton wool, we'll stay on the cotton wool example. They're terrified of cotton wool. And you say to them, well, if you think about cotton wool now, do you have a picture? And they'll go, yeah, it's like here, or it's here, it's right in front of me. And that's because in their subconscious brain, at whatever point in time, the brains took a picture or a little movie, and it's stored that away subconsciously. And what it's going to do is, if you're ever around that thing again, it's going to flash you this image or this video.
So is that image attached to the emotions then?
Yeah, well,
it brings these bad emotions in this case.
And it's what we call visual kinesthetic. So you get the picture, and then that follows by the absolutely irrational kinesthetic response, where you get a load of adrenaline, testosterone, you get a load of cortisol. If you look at someone that's afraid of anything, once they've been afraid, they can't settle down again. They're really kind of looking around. And interestingly enough, they don't even need the thing there to get the phobia. So if someone with a spider phobia, if you say spiders next to them, they freak out, don't they? Kind of go, where is it? Where is it? And that's because they're playing that. The moment you say spider, it triggers that picture, it sets off that kinesthetic response. But it makes no logical sense. So actually what you do with a lot of hypnosis is working with that subconscious part of the brain. one of the areas that I've had the most success with hypnosis is working with things like psoriasis, stress-induced conditions.
So I was going to come on to stress and using hypnosis.
So psoriasis,
pain management.
Pain management. My Achilles heel seems to be smoking cessation. I don't seem to get a lot of success with that. It seems to be very inconsistent. But other things, hypnosis is very consistent. I've got a theory behind that, though. I think a lot of people that say they want to give up smoking would do anything except for actually giving up smoking. So there's that cognitive dissonance where they want to give up, but then they don't want to give up as well. And if that don't want to give up scale outweighs it, I don't think it matters what you do. It's never going to change. But certainly stuff like psoriasis, IBS, eczema, hypnosis is incredible. Non-intrusive, non-medicated, perfectly safe, very natural.
So they're things that your body produces because it believes it's under stress. That stress is coming from the subconscious mind. Would that be the?
Yeah. Well, if you think about, so if we start from the end and then rewind backwards. So things like psoriasis and IBS, eczema, stress-induced conditions. So when someone's stressed out, it flares up and gets worse. So alopecia as well is an example. So if the way we are thinking and the way we are feeling, i.e., we're stressed out, if that's making something worse, it can also make it better as well. Our thinking, if it can make it worse, can also make it better. And that's the nature of hypnosis, is that actually you can work with someone's their subconscious mind and get that to make the changes. Because if you just put cream on psoriasis, you're treating the surface, but you're not actually looking at the
cause and effect.
You're treating the effect as opposed to the cause. And I've done lots of courses like out at the academy in Barcelona where I've done demonstrations of people. I worked with a young Spanish guy out in Barcelona who had psoriasis pretty much everywhere. It's the worst psoriasis I've ever seen. And at the time that he came on one of the courses just as a demonstration because he was a friend of my friends who own the villas. He worked for them. And I always like to work with people live when I'm doing courses to show people, this is kind of what happens. And I did a demonstration of some hypnosis with him. Obviously, he's happy because he gets a session for free as long as he's happy to participate in front of the students. Within about 4 or 5 days, it had gone down about 40 or 50%, which was by the end of the course. 2 weeks later, it's reduced by about 60 or 70%. And it still flares up from time to time, but it is infinitely better now than what it was before you had hypnosis. And that was one session.
So you can go into, you just tell that story in isolation to someone. There's an element of disbelief.
Yes.
You can't cure something with your mind, but the reality is you don't look at it the wrong way around.
Yes. Yeah. And there is this kind of thing with placebo, for instance, the running debate within psychology. Placebo, good or bad thing? Does it give people false hope? Or actually what we're saying is that a lot of things that we've got going on, if we can change the way that the person thinks, can actually have an effect on the outcome. My position is, if someone comes in and they've got something like psoriasis and you use hypnosis, whether that's a placebo for their mind or not, if they no longer have the psoriasis, and they've had no medication, and they've had a comfortable, very relaxing experience of hypnosis, there is no problem with it. I cannot see any negatives to that. And most people that I talk to about stuff like psoriasis, they don't believe it, if I'm honest. And I've demonstrated it many times. I would guide people on courses. Famously, I had a guy on my course who's now a really good friend of mine out in Barcelona once again. He'd had psoriasis really bad on his hands and his knees. He'd had it for 35 years. He'd had it. We used hypnosis. I did a bit of regression work with him. Go back to like what happened 35 years ago. There was a point where you didn't have this, and whatever happened. It's all not what we call content free. So I'm taking them back to a point where you can identify where it starts in the subconscious mind. But I don't know what he's imagining, what he's thinking. And he gets up the next day. It's much better the next day. At this point, his hands were were really dry, really cracked, really red, but all white where it was all cracked. Within about 3 or 4 days, it looked like he just had a little bit of light sunburn. And that was for everyone on the course. They've seen that the improvement each day he got up, it was getting progressively better and better. He'd been putting cream on his hands for 35 years. So
Again, treating the cause rather than cut off the effect rather than the cause.
And it doesn't always work as well. It doesn't. So I'm always very sensible when I chat to people. I don't make wild claims like this will definitely solve your psoriasis or anything. But what I say to them is, look, all that's going to happen is you're going to have a really wonderfully relaxing experience using hypnosis. And often what happens at the back of this is this kind of gets better and better and better, which is what we're aiming for. But if you don't, you're no worse off.
When you've been through session, course, or however long that is that, I don't want to say the word cured, or is that fixed in their way of thinking? Or do you ever notice that sometimes people can regress? So your cotton ball man, as they see, is a big cotton ball, and suddenly there's that wiring kind of. Do you ever see it become undone, or that sort of in that context?
You can with phobias. So, like an example of one of the things that I've seen happen often with phobias when I've worked with them is the person kind of gets over the phobia. So use like spiders as an example, and then someone will test it by like throwing a spider at them, and then they're kind of like they've got the phobia back, and that's because their brain once again has done the same thing. It's perceived it as a threat. A phobia will come from, in my experience, from 2 places. What we call learned behaviour. Lots of spider phobias are learned behaviour, and that is, you're kind of 2 years old, you're playing around on the floor, you're eating spiders at this point, and all of the insects are kind of interesting. But then you see mum or dad see the spider and, bounce off the roof and freak out. And that tiny brain now is, it's our brain is built to keep us alive. And it's going to go, well, if that's how scared mum is or dad, then I need to be scared of this. So you get often spider phobias out there. You ask most people that have got spider phobia, was your mum or dad afraid of spiders? Yeah, my mum was terrified. Her mum was terrified. Her mum was terrified. So it's a learned behaviour. And then the other place is what we call SEEs, significant emotional event. I'm not afraid of spiders, I'm alright, but then one day a big spider drops on me when I'm in my bed, it drops down, and I kind of have that moment where I freak out and panic. And then I can go from being not afraid of spiders for 20 years to suddenly now I'm afraid of it. Flying phobias is a good example. So lots of people that have flying phobias have flown for most of their life and been absolutely fine, and then have a turbulence experience, which is terrifying. And then boom, the phobia's in them.
I'm trying to think where my spider phobias come from after that.
Oh, right.
Have you got a spider phobia now?
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah. What would you give out of 10?
To be honest, it used to be really bad. And this is where I'm trying to think about all that, because you go through the motions. I know that tiny little spider isn't going to somehow kill me. But as far as I'm concerned, I used to be that. Stupid things I've done of like, running away, as in it is just, if there's a spider, I will go as far away as possible as I can from it, get other people to move it, things like that. And you said, even if it's gone from my sight, I still know it's been there, and so I'm cautious. But I've been getting better, and I don't know what's caused that. As in, I'm able to. I've still got the cup and mug, getting it out, and I've been brave enough with the smallest ones to be able to actually touch it, grab it in my hand, and throw it out. Something that looks like it's got a bit of muscle on, then I'm not going near it. But
spider sensitive, muscle legs.
It's all the big sellers. But that's it, and that I don't know where that's come from, but I'm still having those.
Mum or dad? I don't know.
I know my dad isn't, but then I think, what does mum have? Mum, if she's listening, probably shouting me again. I want to say, obviously, maybe it was my mum shouting me doing that, but then I don't know.
Yeah, and then that's with a spider one day.
That's it. Is that I don't know, but you have that conversation with yourself that this is fine. It's not going to do anything. So that's, I guess, now
it's the conscious part going.
Yeah, it's starting to overtake that, and I am being able to actually go near it. Then please don't test this next time anyone hears this, sees me throwing spiders at me. But
do you get a picture? Would you get a picture when you think about spiders?
There's always one that comes back to me. Like that's what, and then when you think about what, like, what's the earliest, sorry for people listening going on about this course. I've got like 2 images that I have, both when I was young. One was like really early, like our first house that we lived in, so I know it was early. And I remember I was young, going to the bathroom, I remember turning the lights on and bang in front of me with a spider. I was like, yeah, that's not what I want to see when I was a little kid. Like, big spider in front of me when I turned the light on, didn't expect it, crap, ran out.
Yeah.
And another one was another one playing in like a garage, and again, it was just that shock moment of it, not expecting it. Whereas before that, for all I know, I was running around in the gardens with them. Yeah, exactly. I was always out doing everything. And it's those 2 frightening moments that I can remember vividly that plays in my head. And even when you were talking about before, as soon as you mentioned spiders, my mind goes to those 2 moments.
There you go.
But that's what I'm trying to override, and it's been for years. I'm just like, well, I'm just scared of them. But then it's like, well, no, don't be scared of them, because you shouldn't be. So that's where I'm trying to get better. But I guess
we should put it to the test. So obviously, the technique takes like 10 or 15 minutes to do. So we'll eat the podcast, but we'll get together and grab a coffee. We can do it over coffee, and then we'll do it, and then we'll test it, and then on the next podcast see.
Yeah, no, I'm up, definitely, yeah. But I say, because as you said, what's the harm in doing it?
Yeah.
The one we're talking about, any form of hypnosis, I'm not going to lose out. And at the end of the day, I know it's just a spider, and it's only going to benefit my day-to-day life of not running away.
So those spiders now that you can start killing instead of...
Well, no, I'm always friendly. They go on our side.
So I suppose on the same note of general free advice. So I know when I was on a course a year ago that you mentioned about the year before, I think you'd had some burnout.
Yeah.
Something that personally I struggled with over the summer was probably looking back, and I'm getting to that stage again, is a little bit of burnout, I think. I'm still kind of struggling to find well, it's not about me anyway, but what was your experience, I suppose, more around that, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah. So my experience at the time was that my greatest passion is teaching, probably even more so than coaching. And I love teaching. I love being, at the time it was at Lillishall, the National Sports Centre, where I used to run all my courses from. And I kind of presume that you couldn't get burnout doing something that you love doing, because I don't, since in the 5 years since I've left the military, and for a large portion of the time I was in the military, I've never got up and gone to work. So I've never got up and gone, oh my God, I've got work today. Especially like what I do now is it's the actual passion of my life. So I over-committed to courses at Lillishall. I think I was trying to, squeeze as much in as I could, which I'm very guilty of from time to time. And I think it worked out. I was doing I think it was 16 or 17 days on the bounce, teaching from pretty much from 8:30 to 5:36 for 16 days with no days off. And I'd been working hard on the way up to that as well. Added to that, at the time, I used to really enjoy going for a beer with everyone in the evening. That was the thing at Lillishall. Everyone would go down the bar, and it wouldn't be going nuts. It would just be 4 or 5 beers. It wouldn't be like a session, but 4 or 5 beers, knowing what I know about alcohol and the way it affects your sleep, and then drinking too much coffee in the day, really having to work hard in the training room because I'm not getting the right amount of sleep, so my brain's not as in the sharpest. And I think over 16 days it was chipped, and then I kind of finished the course, limped over the line, the last course, and then I remember being so shattered when I finished, got back, and I went to bed, and then the next day I just felt even more tired. It's like I feel worse, and I've been sleeping non-stop, and then the apathy that I experienced was incredible. I just couldn't be asked doing anything. I couldn't be bothered getting out of bed. I couldn't be bothered getting charged. And I was like, God, what's going on here? And I was like, do you know what? It's been 15 or 16 days of teaching non-stop. Probably just cooked it. So just chill out for a few days. But then it just, for about a week, I was just like, I wasn't getting any better. And I was thinking to myself, God, what have I done here? And I kind of, I knew deep down that I'd probably overcooked it. And I knew deep down that I'd probably just, not not paid attention to the signals that were very right in front of my eyes and evident. One of the things that I'm really passionate about now is we've got to stop glamorizing being stressed out. We've got to stop glamorizing being overworked like it's a badge of honor. We've got to start. If we've got a Western culture where stress and burnout are the biggest reason why people are off work for any period of time, you know, it's crazy numbers like 40 or 45%, or some, it might even be more than that. You know, there's stress and things associated with stress like burnout. That's symptomatic that the system isn't working. That's symptomatic that, you know, we're not treating our nervous system the way it was designed and evolved to work. We're asking it to do things that it just cannot cope with. If it could cope with them, we wouldn't have this huge number. We wouldn't have, you know, people getting burnt out like myself. Like, you know, you said you've really felt it. At some point, collectively, and I don't know if there is a solution to this, because you can't see businesses slowing down. You can't see, you know, but at some point, and maybe coronavirus is a bit of we're in a bubble over here, but maybe for some it's like a reset. It's an opportunity to reflect. You know, actually, certainly for me, the first period of lockdown, even though I was detached from my girls who were on the island and I was off the island, which was obviously very difficult. Aside from that, it was actually really good. And the reason being is that I just chilled out. For 3 or 4 months, I was like, I know it wasn't good for my business, but you know, applying like this kind of idea of stoicism that I can't control what's going on there. And actually, myself and Ruth, my fiance, we really enjoyed the lockdown. She went through a bit of a wobbly period because she's in the high risk category, so she kind of got all the letters from the NHS about don't go outside. You know, you go outside, you pretty much guarantee you're not going to come back alive.
Yeah, right.
But once we got
that
over that,
24-hour TV,
24-hour TV,
preaching the same.
And then what happened at the back of that was that I was watching Ruth really kind of deteriorate from a mental health perspective, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and watch this happen to my fiance. So we started to look at, you know, what is it we need for a good mind, and, you know, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. What aren't we doing that's given? Where are these 4 neurotransmitters in GABA? What are the activities that give us them? What aren't we doing that we should be doing? What are we doing? Are we drinking a bit too much? Well, the answer was yes. Let's cut down on the alcohol. You know, let's still enjoy some wine and that, but let's just have a specific night where we have a drink rather than every night. So, and it worked. And then what happened at the back of that was I wrote the Happy Chappy Guide, which is my 1-hour presentation on how, and it was born out of anger, that the presentation. It was me annoyed with the news, with the letters from the NHS, with watching my fiance really deteriorate quite quickly as well, you know, over a matter of 3 or 4 weeks. You know, I was coming in from she wouldn't go outside at all. I'd come in from going to like Aldi or Tesco's, and I'd have to strip off all my clothes, all in the washing machine, fresh set of clothes on. All the food would have to be put in a pile. Everything would have to be taken out individually, sanitized, hands then cleaned again, then put away. And this was getting driven by the news, getting, you know, the letters from the NHS, which were well intended and well meant, but they were having a really negative effect on her. And it's been the presentation that I've been given the most over here has been this Happy Chappy Guide, because it's like a simple 1-hour guide. These are the behaviours these are what we want in our brain: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and a bit GABA. This is what the activities that do it, and these are the things to avoid that work against it.
You certainly think that, I use the word responsibility, the government have some kind of duty to find more of a balance than perhaps that. Yeah, and I'm openly critical. I think I understand that we've got to communicate the danger. I absolutely get that. But what we've got to do is we've got to communicate that first and say,
but this is, if you do these things, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You know, the mental health power wave that we're going to experience from the back of this is going to be, it's unfathomable. I think it's going to be.
That's what I was going to say on the other side to what you want to say lockdown or in the Isle of Man we received. I still think that had effect on people as well, because work-life balance went out the window as soon as, I know from when your house turns into your office as well, and things like that, the overload of stress in there and lack of social and, you know, things we know that we talk about, but it's, I suppose it's, I guess, how you then are able to recognize and try and separate that as well, because it's good. There's good
things.
It's that, and that's it. Is realizing, like exactly what you said. There is something here that isn't benefiting us. You know, we are seeing this curve. We need to find out, and I guess that's the more promotion that if we end up going into our second phase on the Isle of Man, then it's something that I definitely think needs definitely more awareness of how to mentally cope with it.
I always think the headline, like, it was, you had one walk a day, and that was kind of the token gesture of, we know you need some stimulate, you know, to do your walk, and that was it. When we should have been not hot. Well, again, I'm not criticising you, I might criticise the people who are making those decisions, but maybe more emphasis on those other aspects.
But I mean, I'm happy to criticise, because I think I'm you know, I haven't watched front row of like watching Rooster Deviation. There's the responsibility by the government to you know, I would say there's a massive difference between leading and leading by example, and actually, you know, at the end of each briefing, there could be a time, just a small period, where, you know, you bring out a psychologist, you know, whoever that may be, sports psychologist over here, and say, look, you know, this is challenging times. You know, these are the behaviours and these are the habits that are really good, that we know create the good brain chemistry, that will mean that you're, you know, doesn't mean you won't have bad days, but it will mean you're more even and you start from a better place. We know that stuff like alcohol represses your NREM sleep. So when people are stressed out, when people are fearful and stressed out, they usually access the behaviours that sabotage their mental well-being. So we drink more, we exercise less,
vicious circle.
And then we go in that vicious circle. So,
without going too deep, why do we do that then?
Because I think that we look for instant gratification. I think alcohol is alcohol's a very unusual drug, isn't it? If you think about it, it's the only drug in the world that you apologise for not taking. So, you know, when you go out and don't drink, what you say to when people say you're drinking, no, sorry, I'm not drinking tonight. You know, where you wouldn't say no, sorry, I'm not taking heroin tonight. So that it's a drug that we apologise for not taking. It's also the reward for our great day, and it's also the consolidation for our worst day. So it's kind of used in every. And I think that what happens is it's easy, and as well, if you really enjoy a glass of wine, like me and Ruth are both real red wine. We love red wine. You know, it's easy to have a bottle a night, isn't it? Now, which is the problem with that, though, is what I find is what people don't realise is that alcohol has this peculiar effect on your sleep. It prevents you from getting the restorative sleep. So just a little bit too much alcohol in your system, and you'll get your eyes closed. You'll sleep really easily. You'll get to sleep really easy, but you won't get the proper
REM sleep.
The REM and the NREM sleep. You'll just get this sort of shallow sleep where you're kind of tossing and turning in the bed. You're not getting the restorative sleep, which your brain cleans itself and it sorts itself out. Now, we should be communicating that. We should have someone, you know, that communicates his message. Now, it's not going to stop people drinking, but it is going to put something in the mind and think, well, actually, I don't feel too great. So perhaps
this is going to compound the problem.
This is going to compound the problem. So maybe I'll just have 2 or 3 days where I won't drink. I'll make sure I get, you know, some good sleep. My dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphin dose, we call it, my dose that I need to get in the day. I'm going to do this for my dopamine. I'm going to do that to get my oxytocin. I'm going to do this for my serotonin. You know, like serotonin is a great example of the first lockdown. You know, primarily we get it from vitamin D, which is the best source of sunlight. But a lot of young people I coach, because they were so afraid of the virus, this invisible enemy. Even though they could go out for an hour, they just became apathetic and stayed in. So even though there was like tons of vitamin D just outside their building, we were kind of shielding ourselves away. And it's only been in the recent few weeks where the government in the UK has been saying, you should supplement vitamin D. And that's because serotonin is directly linked, obviously, to our mood. Low serotonin is linked to depression or feeling depressed. So either we get out and we get sunshine, or we supplement it, but we need to make sure that people get vitamin D because for their serotonin levels. But that should be like a message which is almost on as much send as, these
clean your hands and wash your hands. It should be same amount of coverage.
Exactly. It should be given easy coverage.
Yeah.
But
I'm interested. You mentioned sleep because it was something I wanted to dig into a little bit. I've got just a couple of more things to cover. Appreciate we're probably an hour 46 of the podcast now. But sleep, one of the things that, listen to some sleep podcasts that people were on, Joe Rogan, who studied sleep, and they talked about, it was just an interesting point where they talk about as humans, as going back to, I suppose, caveman days, when we're asleep, we're at our most vulnerable. So naturally, as a species, you want to evolve to need less and less sleep because that's the moment you're vulnerable under attack. The fact we're now this far through our generations and we need the sleep tells us how important, or should demonstrate to us how important it is to get us, how important it is our body wants us, because our body tells us what we need.
Yeah.
The fact we haven't adapted over these many, many generations to not need sleep, that we still need 8 hours.
Yeah.
8 hours of vulnerability, a third of the day.
Yeah.
Just shows so therefore, how important that is. And then it goes on to, obviously you mentioned there about the type of sleep you're getting. So again, they use the analogy of, you get drunk, get up at midnight, have a good 7 hours, but you're tired all the next day. It's still got a good block of 7 hours sleep, but it wasn't the right sleep because your brain isn't going into that REM thing.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at, I think about Mike Cooley and having the time to switch off before you go to sleep. Is your view that that's important? Switch off from your day. So we finish this podcast. It's going to be 9 o'clock. I'm sure my head will be spinning with all the things we talk about. It's important to go away, try and switch some of those switches off within your head.
Yeah. So what we've done in here is done everything we wouldn't want to do for free. So we've got higher.
I didn't have a coffee.
We've got higher natural light, which stimulates the brain. So the two things that nature provides us to springboard us into sleep is temperature and light. So when the light goes and the temperature dips, we start to release melatonin, which is what we do for sleep. Obviously, I've had a coffee, which is exactly right. Ironically, because last night I didn't sleep well, which is very unlike me as well. For whatever reason, I had a bit of a terrible night's sleep last night. But the room's warm, which we want a cold, dark room, and no technology. So like you look at our environment now, we're in like the worst environment we could ever be if we wanted to go to sleep straight away. But yeah, there are some simple things you can do with sleep hygiene that really improve the sleep. Temperature, really important. A cold room is what you want. You don't want the room to be warm. You want I'm not saying you need a thermometer in the room, but what I say to people is when you get dressed, say down to your underpants, if you're a guy, you should be pretty cold and want to get into the bed. And when you get in, it should feel cold in the bed. And that's because we're millions of years after we evolved, the temperature dropping was when we got tired. And the darker the room, the better. And there's some really simple things like going to bed at the same time and then waking up at the same time, regardless of whether it's a weekend, is really good, to the point where you don't need an alarm clock. And the problem with an alarm clock is it inherently wakes you at the wrong point of the circadian rhythm. So that's why you wake up at 5 a.m. and you feel great. And like, God, I feel get up now, but I don't need to get up till 6:30. So.
And when you wake up at 6:30,
you feel terrible, and then because you've gone into another circadian rhythm, and then your alarm's gone off and brought you out of it abruptly. But the only way you can get that natural sleep circadian rhythm where it all fits perfectly is by habitually going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time every day. So that's going to bed at 11, waking up at 6:30 in the morning, doing it every single day. And what it does is it conditions your body. It's almost like anchoring yourself to sleep, and B, it'll remove the need for. Eventually, it'll remove the need for alarm clock. You might put an alarm clock on for 6:45 as a safety net, but you wake up naturally at 6:30 anyway and feel really refreshed. But if you think about those just as 3 simple things, we don't do any of them really.
That's circadian clock. a little bit about what that is.
Well, your rhythms, your circadian rhythms, you go, you have it 2 days. Well, it's called ultradian rhythm in the day. So you have these kind of periods of up and down, which just happen naturally through the day. Circadian rhythm is kind of this natural cycle of sleep. It's different for everyone, but I think it's roughly between 60 and 90 minutes, I think, if I remember. And it's kind of going into that light, really light entry level sleep,
Okay.
go down into the REM, which is the rapid eye movement, which is the dream state. Then the NREM sleep, which is the deep sleep, is when your body disconnects and goes paralyzed in the bed. So you stop moving around, you stop everything.
Okay.
You have no recollection of this sleep, so there's no dreams in it.
Right.
And if you're sleeping in the wrong position, it's kind of when you wake up and your arms all dead because you've been sleeping on it, because you've been completely disabled. And we kind of do this with light sleep, REM, non-REM, back into REM, back into light. Usually when you go into that light sleep, if you need the toilet, that's when you wake up.
Okay.
And you kind of go off to the toilet, you come back, and then you jump back in and drop back down. So things like going to the toilet is not necessarily a bad thing as long as it's in your natural sleep.
Okay.
And the golden rule is we aim for 8 hours. So you say, I've read quite a few books on sleep. I find it fascinating, but there is only one book you have to read, and that's Matthew Walker's, who was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay,
His book is just phenomenal, and certainly you wouldn't think a whole book would be interesting just about sleep, but it is mind-blowing. Like as an example, Matthew Walker says that every year there's like this huge experiment to show you how important sleep is, and what it is once a year across the whole of the UK, there is a rise in heart attacks, suicides, car crashes, and mortality. And then another day in the year, there's a mirrored decrease in heart attacks, car crashes, suicides, and mortality. And it's daylight saving. So when we lose an hour's sleep, there's a spike the following day every year. And when we gain an hour's sleep, there's a decrease, a mirror decrease. And he says this happens every year across the whole of the Western world. Everywhere that studies it gets the same profile. So that tells us that just 1 hour gain and 1 hour loss of sleep has this huge effect if you have enough people to measure it by.
It's a great podcast. He's been on there a couple of times. I think I've listened to his most recent one.
I think it's probably Joe Rogan's best podcast because Matthew Walker is just such a fascinating guy. He's so intelligent. He just, he talks
I'm
about
about to get his book now.
Great book. It's fun.
So a couple of other things then. Just completely switch gears. Again, listen to the podcast you did on Reach. You talked about motivation and commitment, and kind of, I think on there we talk about Clancy, as we know, as a cyclist, where it's December, it's cold, and you don't want to get out of bed, but he gets out of bed to do his training, and that's not necessarily about motivation. I just thought it was quite an interesting concept, because I think about, I want to train in the evening, I'm tired, and I haven't got the motivation, but switching that thought process to this isn't about being whether motivated or not, it's about the commitment to this thing I'm doing. So whether they're good habits or training or whatever they may be for you.
I really believe that. I think we rely too much on motivation. And the problem with motivation is if you haven't got it, if that's what you rely on to do the thing that you want to do, you're not going to do it. And motivation to me is too flimsy. It comes and goes, and you can use that for everything that we do in life. And Ed's a great example of this. And when I remember really clearly, we're doing a presentation in London that one of the big companies in London, we're kind of on stage, me, Ed, the other Phil. And so someone asked him, how do you stay motivated? Because this was at the time he was going into his 4th Olympics. 4-year cycles, track sprinter, just going to the track all the time. The Worlds and the Europeans are kind of
building events,
but they're all building events. It's all about the Olympics. It's all about 3 or 4 races every 4 years. Everything's built around that. And the guy said, how do you stay motivated, for all of these Olympic cycles? And he just said, I don't really, there are days where I really want to get on my bike, and there are days when it's the last thing I want to do. But in that, the comparison he made, which was brilliant, he goes, do you go to work every day? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. Are you motivated to go every morning? You wake up and go, yes. The guy's like, looking around and probably thinking, where's his bosses? No, I don't. Not really. Well, why do you go to work then? And why would I not get on my bike? And I said, well, it's my job, innit? You know, it's what I've got to go to work. And he goes, exactly, because you're committed. You're not giving yourself the option not to go. You're not saying to yourself in the morning, do I want to go today or do I not want to go? There's no internal dialogue occurring along those lines. You're just going, whether you cannot be bothered. You're dragging yourself out of bed, you're getting yourself showered, you're cleaning your teeth, you're getting yourself ready, and you're going to work. And it's the same for me on my bike. Sometimes I really want to do it. Sometimes it's the last thing I want to do. Commitment will always be motivation.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of athletes is they rely on motivation. They think that they need to be motivated. They need to...
It's more the commitment. Because I was thinking about it since we chatted with Ian, I am doing the cold showers in the morning, getting more and more comfortable with them, but it's still there. There's days when I feel like I don't want to do it, and I'm internally going, have I got the motivation to do this? Where maybe I slant the view, and this is because he talks about the commitment being one of his pillars. That I need to reframe it in my mind that this isn't about being motivated, this is a commitment, and therefore commit to it and change that mind.
Go one stage further. The days when you don't want to do it, when you do, you'll get the most benefit from. Yeah, right. So whenever you're having that like internal dialogue, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this today. They're the days when you say to yourself, I know that if I do this now, that this is going to be the most beneficial one of the month. Because this is the one I don't want to do it, and this is the one I'll feel the best. You know,
it's a bit like that with training. When you don't want to go train, you force yourself to go out after the dopamine or whatever. It's even more.
You get the endorphins afterwards, they're the sessions where you're like, yes, because it could have been
gone
another way. I mean, I'm an avid believer in like what Ian does and the Wim Hof method. I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years myself, just personally, just going in and getting in, and now to have like Ian on the other man, a fully Wim Hof trained instructor is fantastic. I've never been in the cold water and come out in a worse place.
Yeah, right.
I've only ever come out feeling much better. And one of the things that I get frustrated myself by, this cognitive dissonance, is I might go like a month without getting in the water or a month without doing any breath work. And then I do it and it feels incredible. And I feel the benefit of it throughout the whole day. But I'm saying to myself, why haven't I been doing it every day?
Yeah.
Using the old badge called busy. And certainly too busy to do it. The famous saying in meditation, everyone should meditate for 5 minutes every day unless you're too busy, and then you should do it for 15. And I think that's like true for life in terms of lots of things that I enjoy, like cold water swimming. And it goes back to what we just mentioned. When we're busy, which usually means we're stressed out as well, because busyness comes with that, we sacrifice the things that actually are really good for us. Like going in the water is so beneficial for me personally, and for many other people. That should be a non-negotiable when I'm busy. That should be like, there's no, that half an hour to go and do that is fixed. It's set in stone. It's in my...
Why is the human nature to push not do those things? I think about that with like fairly healthy eater, but I get less healthy as, I suppose you look, call the word stress, burnout, and then I probably or the sleep gets worse, and it becomes this almost vicious cycle. Talk about that burnout earlier. That's why I felt there was that vicious cycle of, you kind of, what's that? Why are you picking up the worst things? Why isn't your body going? Why isn't your body and your brain going? Why isn't it working for your better cause rather than...
We make poorer decisions when we're stressed out.
Okay.
So when we're stressed out, we think less with our logical, intelligent brain, and we're more with our emotional brain.
Mm-hmm.
So our food choices are more emotional. All our choices are driven by that emotional brain. Stress does that. So cortisol and stress, it just means that we kind of sink into that more emotional brain. The reason for that evolutionarily is that when you're stressed, because the important thing to understand, what is stress? Stress is just our nervous system going into a sympathetic state, and there's accessing our freeze, flight, or fight as a consequence of that. So all it is when you go on a bike, you stress yourself out. When you go on the treadmill, you stress yourself out. When you worry about moving house, you stress yourself out. When you work too much, you stress yourself out. It's nervous system going off in that sympathetic state, speeding up. One of the problems with our nervous system being in a sympathetic state is that we think much more with our limbic brain, with our emotional brain. because we don't need intelligence much. If you look at evolution of what our stress response was for, to get us away from predators that were going to potentially eat us and attack us, you don't need to think logically. Right? You don't need to use this kind of great frontal cortex. You just need to make a decision. Do I freeze? Do I run? Or do I fight with it? And they're the only three decisions you need to be worried about. So, which is why, I don't know if that is when you're really stressed out, making a simple decision becomes really difficult.
Yeah.
You suddenly get like, overwhelm of, should I have a tea or a coffee? You know, I don't know.
No, I see it at work when there's a lot going on, and sometimes you have to be aware to go, right, this isn't the time to make this decision, step away and pick it up.
And that is exactly the right thing to do, because if you think about it, when you're making any decision at work, you want to be working with your logical thinking brain. You don't want to be with your emotional brain.
Or your ego, or your subconscious.
Yes. or your biases. Once again, so a great example of this is students. So students that go into exams and they don't cope well with exam conditions, and they exam poorly, but they're, really intelligent, really bright kids. They just get really stressed out when they're in exams. And because we know that when we're stressed out, we're not as intelligent. We actually think with our emotional brain, we can't access all of our rich logical thinking in our cortex. So what we should be teaching children or young people going into exams is, this is the effect that stress will have, but these are the things that you can do to
coping mechanisms
to alleviate stress. So like breath work, anchoring. One of the things I say to young people, chew bubble gum when you're revising, strawberry bubble gum or whatnot, but then chew the same bubble gum when you're in the exam, because you access the anchor of the flavour.
Okay.
Sitting there and doing box breathing or starfish breathing, where you're just slowing your breath down and just allowing yourself 5 or 6 minutes before the exam starts just to breathe really controlled and deep, will bring you out of your sympathetic nervous system. If you come out of that sympathetic nervous system and hopefully into your parasympathetic, suddenly that neocortex starts to light up and you can access all of the knowledge that's already in there.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's an absolute crime when you've got young people that are really bright but just don't exam well. And I'm not saying it would solve all their problems, but being able to have strategies where they can stay out of their stress response, stay in their parasympathetic instead of their sympathetic nervous system.
So if you look, going slightly off a tangent, if you look at schooling and education in school, do you think that elements of that, or maybe everything we've talked about this evening, should form part of that education for kids? Do you think it's more responsibility of parents to install that, or just your own self-development? Well, I suppose at a kid's age you can't.
It's tough as a kid, because I'm not saying I would have got all A stars, but as in, I used to be sometimes like that of an exam, that I sit down and you look at as soon as you open the paper and you start panicking, there's a time limit, everything else, it just goes out the window, and you look at the page and you're just like, I've suddenly gone blank. And it's one of those, and that only makes it worse when you're like, well,
it's like when you stage fright, isn't it?
Normal in the helicopter simulator. The moment he starts to panic, his logical brain just shuts down, his emotional brain takes over, and he's got 3 options: freeze, flight, and fight. So he's there, and that's all he's got. They're the only 3 he's got on the table. And it's the same with that exam. You open it, you have that moment of panic. That really great neocortex suddenly switches off. The limbic brain takes over. You become stressed. The more stressed out you get, the worse it gets. To the point where you have this kind of like mild anxiety attack almost because you're stressing out so much. Just teaching breath work would be really beneficial. Just very simple. Get the breath under control. The breath regulates nervous system. It's the thing that you can get hold of, your breath.
Yeah.
So everything else that's going on in your sympathetic nervous system, you can't really get hold of straight away. You can't slow your heart rate down. You can't divert blood from different parts, unless you Wim, but that's a whole other thing. What Wim Hof does. But what we can do is we can breathe. We can get control of our breath, and we slow our breath down and make it really slow and deliberate. And if you maintain that for 5 or 6 minutes, suddenly you kind of, I'm calming down. Right, let me look at this again now. And you're in a different world.
Do you see much of that in any of your schools? Do you, as in,
I don't do a lot of work in schools. I do like around exam time, I stick like videos on like a Facebook page and say, you know, if you've got kids, you know, these are 5 great tips for handling stress in exam situations. If you've got kids, you know, share the video with them. Because it should be free information. It should be.
Yeah, no, it does. Sorry, I was more meaning, that was more, I guess, the school itself. That is I'm going to guess that they aren't doing those sort of things for the kids, because it's kind of,
I don't know.
I'm not slating any form of Ironman school, but I just, as in traditional exams are the way to test how good someone is. But this, not saying anything like this,
it's that traditional
the connotation of all this stuff that they're not sure about, you know, that sort of thing, that hypnosis or breathing, or
back to the very start language.
That sort of, exactly. Thinking about that is kind of, well, that won't help, you know, or just a very old way of looking at it, should we say, that isn't coming into what is now, the more research is coming to light, more and more people are knowing about all these sort of,
I suppose they're around hundreds of years ago,
ways. These ways that we know should help us, but we're not doing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I you know, the courses we run in our academy, I teach, you know, with everyone under hypnosis. So I put, you know, the whole class under. We kind of have in the villa. We've got these amazing sort of really comfy sofas now. Everyone gets comfortable. I put everyone under, and then I just start to carry on teaching the stuff that they've done over the last 3 or 4 days. I just reteach it again under hypnosis, usually embedding it into metaphors, into stories and little analogies, which is how we go back to evolution of learning. The reason why storytelling is so powerful, such an amazing way to learn, is because we're hardwired to engage with stories. We've only had formal education for a few hundred years, and you know, for many, many thousands of years, the way we taught our children was, you know, we would sit them around a fire and we'd tell them stories of, you know, the ancestors and the gods, and we would use metaphors and analogies, and I think that when my own daughters get to the age of exams, I will offer them, if they want, to use hypnosis. To the thing that I say though is, you know, there is no ethical questions there, because it's in their mind.
Just going to that, it's like, if you're telling them the answers through hypnosis.
But if I teach them in a classroom, I'm telling them the answers.
No, that's what I mean. But I knew when you said that word there's that ethical reason, because that's where my mind went. It was like, well,
if I was in the exam room with them.
It's exactly right. No, it's,
but it's only like going to sleep and listening to, you know, it's in their mind. The thing with hypnosis is everything that's ever happened to you is in your mind, you know, in some form. You know, your whole life experience has happened. That's why in hypnosis you can recover memories, you know, going all the way back to, you know, when a child's 2-3 years old, they can get these snapshots of memories, whether that's metaphorical or whether that's true. It can be debated all day long, but you can recover all this information. So it's all inside someone's mind. And if you think about an exam as a great example for this, it's not necessarily the information that's the problem. It's the person being in a position where they can access the information. And this is what I think should be part of the way we teach people how to exam is, when you're stressed out, you're less intelligent. When you're stressed out, you're less able to access all of those memories, all of those. You might have done loads of revising, but you just can't get to it because of the stress in your brain. So with hypnosis, whether it's that or whether it's, you know, using techniques to make sure you keep your nervous system in its parasympathetic, keep yourself out of stress. For me, why wouldn't we do it? Why wouldn't we do it? You know, there is no worse crime than a child that's really bright and thinks they're not because they don't exam well. But to me,
I agree. So just then, I got back to 6 other things. Well, that's what we'll end up sleeping in this not very good sleep environment. So just generally, is your business now day to day? Appreciating maybe things are slightly different with COVID, but what you know, where you spend a lot of your time, what you see and what you're doing.
First 5 months was a car crash from March. So
you mentioned earlier.
I started the business last September, so it was kind of 6 months old when COVID hit. And for the first 6 months, we've done brilliantly. You know, it it's better than I could ever imagine. And then obviously coronavirus hit. Every corporate work I had for the whole year disappeared. Every course I had in Barcelona collapsed. It was pretty grim. My whole business model was predicated on in-person training. And suddenly you're in this position where you're, one of the words that I've come to loathe, there's a few words I've come to loathe out of this coronavirus. One of them is, God, I loathe it that much I can't even think about it.
Blocked it out.
So pivot is one of them. Pivot is one.
Adapt, maybe.
No, we live in
certain times.
No, not uncertain times. It'll pop in my mind in a minute. But pivot is the one. So all these businesses, we're talking about pivoting. Everyone's talking about pivoting, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, my whole business is being with people. And I don't know if I want to build a business which is
Zoom or whatever.
I don't know if I want that. So what I did for the first 5 months is I couldn't make anything. I couldn't really do anything with PQ performance. So I started building Myogoji, which is this kind of concept of using adversity to create resilience. An internet-based business. It'll be an app. What I want to do is I want to create a community of people that want to embrace adversity. And I think there's an appetite for that. And if you look at like the Wim Hof method, if you look at what's happened in 2020, I think the timing for what I want to do with Myogoji couldn't be any better, where I think people have, whether they liked it or not, they've been put on the start line of this mental Ironman triathlon and realized that they've done no training for it and found that it's impossible to get over the line. And I think that coming out the back of it, I think what people will start to do is they'll start to look at their minds different. And mindset is a habitual daily thing. It's not like this thing that you go on a course for a week and then that's it, you're sorted. So the whole idea of Myogoji is that it's educational, but it's also experiential. It's about deliberately embracing adversity. It's about going into nature and, we'll be running trips in Sweden in the wilderness, using a guy that I've got, a friend of mine out there, a really good friend of mine who's one of Ray Mears' guys in Scandinavia who works for Ray Mears' Woodlaw, teaching people survival, teaching people bushcraft, teaching people how to thrive in a cold winter environment, bringing people like Ian out, showing people breath work, showing people about the cold water, teaching people about mindset. But instead of it being my PQ Performance is very much an educational business where people come in and it might be in the villa in Barcelona, but it's very much about sitting in the classroom and learning. I want this to be very different. I want it to be very experiential. So I want it to be applying stuff you learn by thought, but by actually doing it, in reality. And I think the world we live in now is probably a good platform for that in a minute. There's probably a lot of appetite for it. If it can be done right.
I get the impression, generally, that maybe it's just more because I'm looking into these things more, but it does seem to be more. I work with people and I chat to friends where I talk about stuff we talk about with other people on the podcast about the mind. There does seem to be more openness to, again, we go back to what people might, I don't know what the right way to phrase, but open to looking and exploring those things rather than just kind of plodding along. Well, I got a job, I go home, I work, I go home, work. And there's more out there, there's more that you can do, and that will in turn have benefits. So, you might perform better at work, you might perform better at your sport, whatever, might just be perform better in your family life, you might be a better person with the people, family and friends. There does seem to be an appetite for that.
I think so, 100%.
Or more of an appetite, should I say.
And even if you just take one example of like what Ian does with the Wim Hof method. I went through with Ian the day laxing, which was kind of interesting. The waves were really big and it's pretty powerful laxing. Like, both of us have been doing it a while. Ian, longer than me for sure, but it was probably on the limit that we'd go in, and it was good to be on the limit as well. Especially with someone that I didn't have to be responsible for because he's more competent than I am with getting in the water. But one of the things that I was saying to Ian that I think is amazing that I've noticed is how many people are swimming in the sea in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started doing it, there were pockets of people that do wild swimming. They tended to be older people, you know, they go swimming every last Sunday of every
in Port Erin or whatever.
But now if you go down, like you go down Peel on Friday, and there's a load of guys that are going down there, and if you know, we went down to a beach, you know, I go a lot to the one down by Douglas Head there. You know, we go down the steps to.
Okay, yeah.
And we went there the other day, and there was a woman there on her own, just in there doing breath work in the cold water. If I go to Laxey, it's the same. And it might be coincidental, it might be kind of, you know, the fact that I think I'm noticing it, but certainly I never used to see all these people out doing it, and that's brilliant. Yeah. And that's just one. That's like the Wim Hof method. But I think, you know, getting back into nature, treating your mind if it's muscles, so like working on your mindset instead of you know expecting it to be there when you need it, when you don't put any effort into it.
Yeah, or assuming it is the way it is and you can't change it.
Yeah. And we know that, you know, with neuroplasticity now. We know that, you know, there used to be the theory that like when the brain reaches adult form, it didn't really change from there. But actually, we you know now when you look at things like London cab drivers, when they do fMRI scans, that they kind of have this really overdeveloped part of the brain, which is unsurprisingly linked to location and sort of, and kind of an internal map. Mm-hmm. And that's because, you know, they've studied, and they've done bicep curls with that part of the brain, and it's grown and evolved and gotten bigger and stronger. So your whole brain, I think, is like that. The more you use it, the more you apply it and learn and do all sorts of different stuff, you know.
That incremental effect you're talking about earlier. I think the small, you'll eventually notice the.
But and I think there's so much cool stuff around as well to do that. You know, that incremental effect that you mentioned there. You know, there's, like I say, there's Ian, there's Mike, there's loads of like yoga women that are just phenomenal at what they do. Yoga terrifies me because I always think that someone said to me, you should do yoga, and I was like, no, I couldn't do it because I'm too inflexible. And he said, that's like saying you're too dirty to have a bath. The reason to do it, not to not do it. But you know, there's so many people over here now, and I know I'll probably miss people out. If you go to Mike's, when he does his Mindful Man Festival, there's so many interesting people that are all doing stuff that's a little bit different. But the opportunity for people to have a go at stuff is incredible.
It's funny, again, use the word like different, again, immediate connotations of, it's not normal. Anyway, thanks for coming in. I would apologise for people listening that it's long but stuff here, because it could be twice as long. I think when I first saw you a year ago, I wanted to, we didn't just start this project really more to chat, so appreciate you. It's taken a little while to get you, but appreciate it. Maybe somewhere down the road, we can get you back in and cover the other things that we didn't get to talk about this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
thanks very much.
No, pleasure.
Thank you.
Want to check it out, Matt?
Yep. So wherever you're listening or watching, please like, share, subscribe, and leave those 5-star reviews, pretty please. Social media, Facebook with the M-Word Podcast. Twitter, we are at M-Word Podcast with the number 1. And Instagram, we are the M-Word IOM. And as I mentioned, we are live and, well, we're recording anyway. So check us out on YouTube as well if you search for the M-Word Podcast.
Yeah, I think the hope in Come On Podcast is to stream some live.
Yeah.
Should be a laugh.
So watch out for those.
So thanks for letting us in your ears, you sexy people. It's word out from Ron.
And word out from Matt.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.